What's good, y'all? Hope everybody is well. Y'all know what it is. Welcome back to the Onyx Report, where we, as Black male justice advocates, uplift Black men and boys using critical analysis. Sorry, I'm starting a little bit late today. Still getting things together for the semester. Hold on. Let me see here. Shouting out to one of my boys. Let's see. Anyway, so what is he doing? Okay, that's weird. Can't see it. Anyway, hope everybody's well. Trying to get this going. We got a few people already in the house, which is always good to see. Shout out to a number of y'all. What's going on? Let's see, Brother Malika. Always good to see you in here. Brother Donnie, what's up? You know, we got Ed, we got Prada, we got Ryan, Commander Bastard, Black Man Swimming. Hope everybody is good. Before I continue, let me go ahead and shout out my supporters. I'm very much in appreciation for your ongoing support. So let's get that. Much appreciation, Prada. Here we go. All right. Much appreciation. Again, hope you guys are well. Lee's Ways, what's up? Michael, Show Me, Marty, what's going on? Jay Cleveland, Mr. Blue Collar, good to see you, man. Thank y'all for coming in. 32 people in here so far. Please make sure you like, share, subscribe, join with a membership to the channel, and donate to support what we do. And as y'all know, as I always say, there are different levels of membership support. You can do this through YouTube by clicking the join button right next to the subscribe button. If you have not subscribed, please do so. You can also support through Patreon, right? Support through the patreon.com. You see the link right below my image. And you can not only provide monthly support for the show, you can also support the Institute for Black Male Studies. So just wanted to get that out the way. I'm not going to spend whole lot of time reminding y'all to donate. It is what it is, but I do hope you will support those who are trying to bring you something new. What's up, Joe? It's all good. I understand we all going through something, so it is what it is. But yeah, so got an interesting one today. Interesting one, and this has a lot to do with some of the things that's been, coming across my desk recently. As usual, I tend to be inspired by everyday occurrences, interactions, conversations. That kind of inspires what goes on next. And I got one tonight that I'm definitely going to want you guys' feedback on. I want your experiences. So I will be putting out the link later on for this one, because this is not a subject to be tackled by one person without feedback from the very brothers that live it. And for those of us who have not necessarily lived it, we've had our interactions with it, meaning I've been a step boyfriend, to kids. I didn't marry anybody that already had kids, but I played stepfather in that respect. I've grown up with stepfathers, that kind of thing. And a lot of my boys have been stepfathers. So, we all have some connection as Black men, and I'll explain why in a little bit. But before I go there, there's a quick little mention that I'd like to get out there. And y'all know over here we celebrate Black men, we celebrate Black boys, we celebrate Black male accomplishments. And I thought there was one worthy of reflection. If you haven't heard, we talked a little bit before about a piece that came out in Vanity Fair. I think I talked a little bit about it last week. Well, a good brother of mine has actually responded to it. Oh, brother Derek, appreciate that support. Yeah, a good brother of mine has actually responded to the piece in Vanity Fair with his own publication. He's been on the show before, brother Torrin Walker. Shout out to him. He did a piece that, oh, wow, that's really weird. How did that? Damn it. Anyway, here we go. It's on moguldom.com. Yeah, my computer is definitely acting funny. This is not the time for all of this. I swear, I stepped away from this thing for like 5 minutes. And stuff is disappearing. Yeah. I don't have, there's nothing going on with this thing. Anyway, but you can go check it at Moguldom Nation, moguldom.com. It's called Opinion, the Black Boogeyman Lie. And it's a well-crafted, thought out piece that does a good job of situating works like those coming out of Vanity Fair and Elle magazine. There have been a number of hit pieces against Black men that have been coming out recently. And that's one of the interesting things you notice when we talk about, these kind of publications, these high-level publications that come out that attack Black men. You have a cadre of people that benefit from this, and they know this, and they're well-trained, and I've witnessed that training, well-trained on doing this and understanding the exchange of being able to advance their careers at the expense of pathologizing Black men and boys. And they do it, quite often, and they usually get high-level, platforms to do it off of. But Torrin actually did an excellent piece, like I said. Now I'll read you a portion of it because it was just, really well done. He said, adapted by Donald Trump and the far right to attack mainstream press, the concept of the big lie, now known as fake news, worked to convince his diehard supporters that he was being undermined by a shadow government from the moment he took office until his defeat in the 2020 election, culminating in the events of January 6th. The writer of the Vanity Fair piece uses the term the big black ass lie to refer to the truth that African American men are at or near the bottom of every American socioeconomic success indicator, signaling to Vanity Fair's white liberal readership that they should regard it as untrue also, associating that truth in the American public mind to the lies spread by not. Thanks for that support, MLR. Appreciate that. Let's see. Signaling to Vanity Fair's white liberal readership that they should regard it as untrue also, associating that truth in the American public mind to the lies spread by the Nazis and Trump, as well as linking Chappelle to notorious Black male offenders like Bill Cosby and R. Kelly, further reinforces the idea that the critical issues affecting Black men and boys can be ridiculed and ignored. Two ideas have taken root regarding Black masculinity in academic and activist organizations. One is that the cis heterosexual Black man is taking up too much space and taking attention away from other marginalized Black groups. The other is that straight Black men are still toxic patriarchs despite their oppressed status, a concept that gained traction in academia via the 5th chapter of Shulamith Firestone's The Dialectic of Sex and Michelle Wallace's Black Macho and the Myth of the Superwoman. It's an idea that spreads easily online among people who haven't done research or those who use those false narratives to pander to those who haven't. Right? Shout out to Terrain. Excellent work. Or Torrin, excuse me. So if you go check it out, I think you'll be impressed with it. Share it, get it out there. We definitely want to support Black men who are putting out content that refutes these narratives and stereotypes that have become extremely popular, right? So please make sure you support that. That again is on moguldom.com, right? Yeah. So shout out to him. So anyway, Let's see here. Let's get to it. All right. So here's the thing. There was a couple of posts that I ran across on social media the other day. And the post had one impact in and of themselves, but then the conversation around it, of course, stimulates a lot of thought one way or the other. Right? The recent one, the first one I want to put up, speaks directly to this issue of false paternity. Right? Now, this was a post that was both sent to me, sent to me and, well, multiple times, I should say. Okay. So, you can see it on the left. Man posted this in a Black Fathers group. What advice could y'all give him? The man says, I'm effing lost. Empty. I've taken care of this child for 13 years to get DNA results saying she's not mine. What am I supposed to do, fellas? I have never felt so effed up in my life. Right? Straight up. No chaser. Just straight in your face. This is a brother who's going through it and has just discovered that after 13 years, child isn't biologically his. Now, I should say, in multiple places I've seen this posted, the reactions really took two major tones that I saw. You either had men that just said, look, it's already your child, just do it. Take care of the child. It is what it is. Or you had women coming in and shaming him for not getting tested earlier, for not figuring it out and just divining that was the case, And there's not a lot of information given here. We don't know the circumstances of the relationship, marriage, whatever. We don't have a lot of detail, but people were comfortable assuming what the details must be. And overwhelmingly, when I saw women respond, a lot of it was about shaming men for not having figured out earlier. And even some of the brothers would contribute to this. But people had a difficult time actually holding the woman accountable. Most particularly women that were writing in had a very difficult time actually holding women accountable for this type of manipulation. All of the emphasis from both men and women were strictly on him. And I found that interesting. As you can see in the first response he got on the right, or at least the response that was posted when it was sent to me, somebody writes in, crazy hard situation. First, I'm so sorry. You must feel like, second, you are the best dad despite the deceit. It's not your fault. Don't put that on your plate. You sincerely did the right thing. Lastly, that child is yours. She may not have your DNA, but she has something more important, your love and influence. That is your legacy and her blessing. It's about her now. And that was one of the prevailing ideas as well. It's all about the child. What's best for the child. Now, it's not that I'm in complete disagreement. I mean, God forbid, if I found out, some mess like that now, my son is my son. It is what it is. My problem is not that I'm saying that this brother should just get up and walk away or that he should just stay regardless of how he feels. My problem is people's assumptions about Black men's energies and labors, right? Energies and sacrifices. Right? That's the issue that I want to get into a little bit tonight. Right? I want to talk about people's assumptions about what Black men should do, how they should feel, and what is a real man in people's perceptions. And the way it usually kind of turns out to be whatever's in service of them, most particularly women in that regard. But that was the first part. And it kind of, there was something in that kind of bothered me because we have some real comfortable assumptions here, right? We tend to be very comfortable with ideas about male service to family, to women. And there was a lot of pushback at the very idea that he should even take a moment for himself to decide if he wanted to stay or go. Even just reflecting on it was frowned upon. And I found that to be very interesting. Yeah. But let's look at the second one. So I got a second post that I thought was, in a similar vein, but a little different. And I posted this here on YouTube as well in the community section. This is one of two from the same person. Her name, I guess, is Hestia. And she wrote, one part of the great granddaddy had a whole nother family across town story that we forget is that sometimes great grandma had a child that wasn't biologically fathered by her husband, or doubt was cast for a reason. Folks' foremothers didn't only sit at home and cry. Then she says, there are many families where one of the middle or younger children has a different genetic donor. Yet all children were raised as if they were the husbands. We got to start telling whole stories. Infidelity and dishonesty doesn't always start or end with men. Shout out to her. Shout out to her. See, the story that, the other post I put up was something that happened now. This woman actually took it back in the day. Grandparents, great grandparents, so on and so forth. And, we always hear about infidelity in men. We always hear about, stories about, especially, mid 20th century families, the father, grandfather that had more than one family. We hear about those tropes all the time. Casual conversation. There's usually no evidence brought up, but still, we hear about it. And it usually comes down to men ain't shit. Men can't be trusted. Infidelity is, as easy for men as breathing. But one of the things I said when I posted this woman's responses, I said, a lot of people severely dehumanize men of different eras and eras today, right? They dehumanize men, particularly in this older era, by suggesting that their infidelity, when it did occur, was just a natural occurrence. It was just men being men. And maybe to some extent it was. But what they leave out is men's humanity and how men are responding sometimes, many times actually, to things that are occurring in real time. So one of the things I talked about is how there were plenty of married men that did find out or figure out that they'd been lied to. And they stayed and raised the families, but emotionally may have checked out because of the lies, manipulation. When you talk about men of a certain era having more than one family, how many stories do you hear about a man who actually emotionally checked out because of what he experienced and hooked up with someone else while still paying the bills in both households? Now, I'm not advocating for it one way or the other. What I'm saying, though, is our assumptions are real comfortable about denigrating men and reducing them to nothing but, whatever hole they can stick something in, and not as grown, thinking, feeling human beings that were responding to things they were experiencing, responding to having been lied to, having been manipulated, and yet loving those kids. I mean, this is something that it goes back to the plantation. I mean, you got men, to the extent that they could be fathers to families, who had to negotiate with their own sense of self, raising children that were clearly sired by a slave owner. Fast forward 100 years, and they're looking at kids that don't look nothing like them. Now, if you hear about a man that just leaves his family, that's the extent of the story, which just becomes another trope about Black men not appreciating family, not being consistent, not caring. But you don't know what he went through, what things he experienced that your grandmother wasn't going to tell you about. She's not going to enter her side of that story. That she had sex with a couple different men, didn't know whose the father was, got married to the one that was the most financially stable, told him it was his, and passed that lie off for generations. And that man figured it out. It broke his heart. He stayed, took care of the family he loved, but still was only 1 foot in. Those are the kind of things I think about. Not only how are Black men dehumanized now, but how they've been dehumanized historically. And how do they navigate that dehumanization, especially prior to DNA testing, right? But those are the kind of things that grab my heart and challenge me, because I look at this stuff and I'm blown away at how comfortable people are. really comfortable. And one of the things I've been trying to tell you guys this last few weeks is what people are really, really comfortable with is our emotional labor. Now, I talked about before, emotional labor is emotional. It does deal with the sacrifices made for other people's well-being on an emotional level in terms of stability. But when we're dealing with families, emotional stability is tied to material stability. And the social expectation that men be the primary breadwinners is still very much alive, even if people don't admit it publicly. And publicly and on talk shows, we hear everybody saying they want to be equal, they want to be this, they want to be that. You know how many brothers report to me how often, even in dating, they hear, when we get together, your money is our money, my money is my money. Or I want to be in a relationship, I may make as much as you or more, but I only want to be responsible for 10% of the household. I want you to take care of that. And then turn around and call you sexist if you say, well, are you going to clean the house or take care of the kids? See, that part of it is clear. That part is regarded as sexist, but it's not sexist when women tell men that you're responsible for the household. You're the leader, you're the father, you're the head of household in name, especially in the bedroom. But yeah, also as it pertains to these bills. Now, I'm still going to work. The public appearance is that we're the same and there are no gender roles in our household, but there are comfortable gender roles when it comes down to who's going to pay that light bill. And that's the part that doesn't get discussed. So in casual conversation or professional spaces, when men's roles and relationships are defined, suddenly people forget about the one-way traditionalism that's been imposed in relationships. And it all becomes about men's sexism and expectations of social roles that no longer make sense. And there shouldn't be any gender roles at all. Everybody is just everybody. Everything is everything. But behind closed doors, men have to hold down the responsibilities. And here's how you know. If she loses her job, do men generally leave wives and girlfriends because she lost her job? Good. Reverse that. Do women leave when men lose their employment? Do we have the same outlook when it comes to income and family stability when it comes to men and women? That's an interesting one to me. Because when we talk to people about it, men overwhelmingly talk about the ways in which they are expected to hold everybody down, even though they're not given credit for it, because in public, everything is equal and there are no gender roles. Under the table, he's got to hold us down. If he fails, we may leave him. We may shame him. We may tell him he's less than a man, or we may stay with him, but he has no respect coming from anybody in the household anymore. But if she loses her job, he's still got to hold everything down. I love my wife. Blessings to her. I don't mean to speak in any negative way about her. Especially since she's not here anymore. But I will say, because of her sickle cell, she lost jobs a lot. And they found ways around the legalities of health being the reason. They made up reasons at times. But one thing I noticed when I was out of work, it was a big deal. Both sides of the family, hers and mine, would call and say, what's going on? Why isn't the light bill paid? What's going on with the heat? What's going on with the rent? I got those calls from her family and mine. They called me when I was out of work. When she was out of work, not a single call. And she, bless her heart, never worried about bills, food, rent. And much appreciation, Durante. When she got much appreciation, brother, show me. When she got, when she would voice her issues after losing a job, it was never about whether or not there would be groceries, whether or not the rent would be paid, the light would be paid. She was upset that she lost it, and she would talk a lot about the emotional strain of what went on in the office or whatever. When I lost work, what are we going to do? See, this is what I'm talking about. It's an under the table set of expectations. So in other words, we took the traditionalism of the 50s. We said that it no longer exists, but men are still socially pressured to provide it, but not publicly so. So when things are going well, we can say, look, we're a power couple. We're Beyonce and Appreciate that, Martin. We're Beyonce and Jay-Z. We're everybody wants to be a damn power couple, but when shit hits the fan, everybody looks at him. Right? So when things are well, everything is everything. When things are poor, we look at him. And if he doesn't get it together quick enough, everybody leaves, or potentially so. And if they don't leave physically, they leave emotionally. They leave with, no sense of respect for him. But if she's out of work, it's all good. So what I'm saying to you is this traditionalism, this one-way traditionalism, is still very much alive. And when you see think pieces and articles written about it, especially by feminists, they frame it as, look at, appreciate that, brotherly love. Hope everything's well out there in Philly. You know what I'm saying? When it's kind of framed that way, the way these feminists will write these think pieces is, look at all these sexist men, all these patriarchal men that can't wait to dominate women. But what they're missing is how many women demand traditionalism from them, even during the dating stage. But the way it works in the Black community, however, is that traditionalism you have to keep under wraps. In other words, to publicly put out there that you are the primary breadwinner in the household is almost considered an embarrassment to her. So you're supposed to tamp that down and present an equal footing kind of relationship in the public. But the responsibility still falls on your shoes. And we can't say that publicly and be understood. But when we get together as men and start sharing stories, brothers got all kinds of stories that affirm that very point. But I digress. So getting back to, this post, this woman is calling out grandfathers of elder generations or whatnot who tried to find some semblance of peace despite having been lied to about who their own kids actually were. And this woman actually tried to humanize men who've gone through that, right? Tried to humanize them. And you had all kinds of responses. But to both pieces, the prevailing idea, to the first one, where the brother's talking about finding out his 13-year-old child isn't his, to the second one, where this woman is talking about how many of our grandfathers went through this and suffered that pain and nobody knew. And grandma took it to her grave. Grandma took it to her grave. That uncle that's really light-skinned with red hair, and none of that in either one of the mother and father's bloodline, ain't nobody said nothing about that. Not publicly. Appreciate that, Andrew. It's one of those things. So in either situation, one of the things I notice is that the idea for Black men is to shut up and take it. Shut up and accept it. It is what it is. Now, when I talk about emotional labor, right, just to kind of make sure we remember what that meant, I talk about male relationship emotional labor, right? It provides a myriad of forms of emotional security to varying degrees for women in general, be it intimately, publicly, socially, institutionally, and or politically regarding policy. It is a hidden relationship expectation alongside money, sex appeal, sexual performance, and Black male gynocentric servitude. It is the masculine counterpart to the socially expected female gender role of providing nurturing and support in relationships. It is our most sought after resource as it is part of our protection dynamic, despite that it's often not acknowledged by women or men publicly. Appreciate that, golden child. What's up? Right? This is what people are actually fighting over. When that brother said this child I've raised for 13 years, not biologically mine, what people invoked was that he needed to continue to give his emotional labor, not only to the child, but to the family. And to think otherwise is selfish, problematic, whatever. Damn how he's feeling. Damn the degree to which he's been manipulated. And there are some brothers that really do want their own families. They want to actually see their own bloodline. And that isn't to say that one shouldn't adopt or one shouldn't care about stepchildren. But should men who want their own children be demonized, especially if they resent being manipulated and decide that they want to move on to find their own families? And they don't necessarily have to cut off relationships altogether with the kids that they've been raising. That's one of the assumptions I find problematic. Right? You're just gonna leave that child out there and hurt them. First of all, he didn't hurt them. The mother hurt them. Let's get that straight. Because that was one of the things I noticed in these discussions. People had a real problem with, men and women. They had a problem with holding mama accountable. It became his fault if he decided to leave. He was hurting the child. No, she hurt the child when she lied. He has every right to decide what he wants to do. And here's the thing. I don't shame a man either way. You stay and raise that child, you got my respect. You decide that you want to move on and build your own family, you know what? You still have my respect. Because at the end of the day, your choice should not be removed over public shaming or this assumption that your emotional labor is everybody's. It's just welfare for everybody else. Nobody refills your tank, but when things go wrong and you've been lied to and manipulated, you have to give more. Why? Just because. But at least, a couple of decades ago, you at least had the honor of being treated as someone who has sacrificed for the family to a degree that others don't have to. At least you got some semblance of public respect for that. Now you're supposed to tamp that down and hide it because it makes people uncomfortable and it doesn't make them feel like they're making the same kind of sacrifice, even when they're not. I don't have a problem. Only thing I would say to a brother in that situation is whatever choice you make, do it righteously. Do it righteously. Do it because you feel it, that you know in your heart this is what you need to do. Don't do some shit that goes against everything about you, because then it's dishonest and it's going to wreck it. Whatever it is, whether it's staying or leaving, doesn't matter. Whatever choice it is, if you don't do it righteously, if it's not really deep set in your soul that this is the way to go, and you make a decision that goes against yourself just to make everybody happy, you're going to be living in misery. And statistically speaking, she still may divorce you and hit you up for child support. Then what? Make a decision based on where your heart is. And as long as you're true to yourself about it, you ain't going to get no judgment from me. I'm going to defend the fact that you have every right to make that decision. And that being lied to does not somehow erase the capacity for you to make your own life choices about what you want to do with your energy. Appreciate that, Brother Andrew. Thank you. People get real comfortable with assuming your emotional labor. And I want you to get very accustomed to this idea of what's being asked of you, even if it's intangible. I want you to get comfortable with this idea because we've never been allowed to talk about the intangible sacrifices that are expected of us. See, that's not even a discussion men have. Men don't even know how to talk about that, really. You know how many brothers reached out to me in the last month behind just hearing the words emotional labor and associating that with men? Do you know how many brothers started writing me with stories saying, is this emotional labor? What about this? What about this? From family situations to articles in newspapers. And overwhelmingly, much of the time, it was exactly that. Because we've never been taught how to look at our sacrifices except through material lens. And then we were told that those sacrifices didn't mean anything because there's no such thing as gender roles. But on top of that, now there's an expectation of emotional presence and all these kind of other things that our great grandfathers didn't. That wasn't an expectation of them. The definition of manhood changed and men were told what they were now supposed to do, but they weren't allowed to get rid of the past definitions. If anything, it became additive. They still had to live up to the past expectations while having others added to it. We were just told to ignore the past definitions while still being told to perform it, but under the table. And the respect you used to get sitting at the table with the quote unquote big piece of chicken, and at best you get that in the bedroom. You're still daddy in the bedroom, but outside the bedroom, you better not expect that. So there's a couple of pieces that I want to share with you that kind of frame what's going on, because we started okay, let me say this. The two pieces I put up about paternity fraud got my attention, and then there was a whole different stream of conversation that popped up in those threads. Now understand, there was a lot of different streams. It went from everything from policy about whether or not DNA testing should be performed at birth, and it should be mandatory. It went to, whether or not Democrats and Republicans would allow for it, who owns the DNA tissue, who should have the right to push it. It went all the way there to, just all over the place. But one stream of conversation that got my attention was that there got to be this discussion about being a stepfather. Being a stepfather. And the way in which that was treated very much the same way as the brother who found out his 13-year-old child was not biologically his. Dating shows to, hell, I just watched one with Dr. Phil and Steve Harvey, and, whole idea of men accepting whatever women impose with no pushback. The idea that, if you meet a woman with kids, for you to decide you don't want to be a stepfather is egregious. It was the same response that I saw to the brother that questioned what to do when he realized his child wasn't his. It was shut up and take it. Shut up and accept it. Don't push back on it at all. You have no voice, and how dare you question whether or not to be with a woman that has kids. Look, let me tell you something. My son is 16. There was a time, he was about 6 or 7, where I seriously entertained having another child, and I wanted one. And then I started to look at the cost, not the cost of raising a child. That's nothing. Contrary to, family courts, it's not expensive. It really isn't. Raising a child doesn't have to be expensive. That shit has been blown out of proportion. But the cost of procreating these days with, somebody who's raised with a mind state that a family court is a damn right that solely belongs to her, and the extent to which the courts support that notion, it made it extremely dangerous. So I just kind of started to be very careful about that. And then, individual situations I ran into, it just didn't make sense to even go there. And now I'm at a point where I'm pretty cool with not having any more kids. But of course, majority of women I meet have several. From 1 to 5 kids, I've met women, and they were very clear about what they expected you to do. It didn't even dawn on them that you may not want to be a father. They just accepted it as a truth. And I understand why. And I've said this many times. Up until, my 20s, I just thought that I had to do it, especially in the Black community. And I'll tell you why in a second. But I thought it was pretty much a foregone conclusion that any woman I got with, once I got grown, was going to have kids. I just assumed it because I grew up with it. I was a kid in a single parent household, and my mother had boyfriends and eventually husbands. I was one of those kids. I didn't understand why some guys came and went. I didn't understand why there'd be a war council in the living room with her friends, and they talk about the dude that didn't want to do it. Like, to me, I was like, what's wrong with him? Didn't dawn on me until I became a man. And then I started to have women asking me the things that I saw women in my family asking other men. And ironically enough, it's funny, I remember my mother actually got upset when I told her stories about some of the women that would demand things from me. And she was like, this is ridiculous. And I was like, yo, Ma, you remember that time you told me that if a dude didn't start paying bills after 2 weeks, you thought he was a deadbeat? Me? Appreciate that support, Sir. Zerg says, I'm a single dad and these sisters aren't cutting me any slack. But when I did not have kids, I dated single mothers all the time. Real talk. Hell, one of the things, look, so y'all know, my son was 4 when my wife died. And I was actually trying to also find him a mother alongside wanting to potentially have other kids. You know how many women with kids I ran into that didn't give a damn about him? If anything, they were comfortable with me ignoring him and prioritizing their children right in front of them. I had this Walt Disney idea that mothers were, women were just natural mothers. And no. They were mothers to their children. Whereas men might consider walking away from somebody with kids, they didn't have any intention on walking away. They just didn't want to have anything to do with my child. They wanted me to have everything to do with theirs. That's something else we're not supposed to talk about, right? Again, They wanted my emotional labor, my resources. They didn't want to have to extend any to him, and would only extend some to me at their whim. And what that meant to me, what that meant was basically occasional sex. She got multiple kids. She can't afford it. It's expected that you compensate. You take care of the things she can't afford. And in exchange, you get occasional sex. You get to watch your child be emotionally alienated. I only had one woman in 10 years that actually treated my son well. When I talk about like full-on relationships. Only one. And it was, so these are the kind of things I think about. And I don't hear them discussed publicly anywhere because men are shamed if they do so. So I have no problem with men taking stock about whether or not they want to play that role. But anyway, the reason I raised the question of stepfathers alongside the question of paternity fraud is because essentially, when a man is lied to, that's what the hell he is, even if he is the father. It is what it is. But then black men are treated as interchangeable pieces. We're expected to be stepfathers. We are expected to accept it. And I'm not saying you should or you shouldn't. I had some great stepfathers. I did. I'm not denouncing that. There was a time period where I remember the conversation in the black community is, we got a community, we got to pitch in, we got to help. But I think there was a point where that kind of shifted into predatory waters, where some women were like, not only are we going to shame them, we're definitely going to use family courts and police departments to make him do what we want him to do. It became less about, community need, communal need, and became more about, I can make him do what I want. And if for any reason I can't make him, or I get tired of him, I can divorce him and take what he has. This kind of system, this kind of dynamic that's set up became extremely predatory and problematic for men who just wanted families. And instead of that narrative being out there, the only narrative that's popular about black men is that they can't stand family, or they don't understand it, or they're just inherently, toxic or what. But there's no discussion about what men's experienced narratives, what their experiences actually have been, and why they make the decisions they make. Right? But anyway, there's some information I want to share that'll help us kind of put some context to some of this stuff about families and about stepfathers and the stepfather role that we're expected to play. Now, let me pull this up if I can. Okay. All right. There we go. All right. So the first piece of tonight, because I'm going to bring up about six different pieces that I think will help us kind of frame this discussion. Okay. First one is, let me do this here. Oh, that's not the right one. Come on. There we go. Yeah. See, it's a little off on the side. Let me see if I can fix that. I've been tinkering with this all week. She's been a little moody, and I want you guys to be able to see it. So, all right, come on, work with me. Nice. All right, a little bit better, but I think we can do better than that. Anyway, so this is the first piece. This is a Pew study. This report comes out in 2011. So it's an older piece, Pew Research Center, right? A portrait of step families. And the first thing I want you to look at is this graph here, right? It's a graph on step relatives. And it's about the percentage of all adults who have at least one step relative, a step or half sibling, so on and so forth. And the note at the bottom says, only those who have ever been married were asked if they have stepchildren. However, the percentage reported in the table is based on all respondents, right? And so we have, right, 42. It says they've at least had one step relative. This is the one that might blow your mind. Demographics of step families, right? Demographics of step families. Hold on, let me do something here. Tried to get my bat cave on with all the monitors, but sometimes it gets a little daunting. So, all right. So, demographics of step families, right? Percentage who have any step relatives, step or half siblings, step parent, step child. See men and women, you see various age groups, right? Men tend to have more step relatives. Or, I'm sorry, women tend to have more step relatives, right? We see it especially at younger ages, right? But let's look at Black. Let's look at Black. Black has the highest, right? The highest step relatives at 60. Higher than any other group. Right? Even higher in terms of age, even higher in terms of just gender. Black, highest numbers of step relatives. And let's go down. Let's look at why. This report says at a particular point, a higher share of Blacks than whites or Hispanics have step family members. Among Black adults interviewed in the Pew Research Survey, 60% have at least one step relative. This compares with 46% of Hispanics and 39% of whites. The biggest gap between Blacks and whites is the proportion of each that has step or half siblings. Some 45% of Black adults report having at least one step or half sibling, compared with 26% of whites. Roughly the same proportion of Blacks and whites have a living step parent, and Blacks are somewhat more likely than whites to have stepchild. Among Blacks, there is a large gap in the percentage. Shout out BM Cray, I think that is. Thank you for the support. So among Blacks, there's a large gap in the percentage of men and women who report they have stepchildren. 1 in 4 Black men. 1 in 4 Black men, right, say they have a stepchild, compared with 14% of Black women. Black men are also much more likely than white or Hispanic men to say they have stepchildren, meaning to acknowledge it. I thought that was interesting. 1 in 4. You said, Micah, you said post what? I'm going to put all the links to every article I go through tonight. I'm going to put it in the description a little bit later. So don't worry about that. But this you can find, pewresearch.org. And again, it's entitled A Portrait of Step Families. And what we find is overall, Black families have the highest number of step relatives, and in particular, Black men. Yeah, what are you asking me to post, though? Oh, just the article itself, the link in the comments? Sure. I'm going to put in the description as well. But here you go. Appreciate that, Clutch. I didn't know what he meant, so thank you. All right. What's up, Tim? Thanks for the support. Good to see you in here. Sorry if I missed you as you came in. I'm, trying to get somewhere with this. So that's one of the first things, right? One of the first things I notice is that when it comes to Black men, we tend to be stepfathers more than any other group. That's one of the first things that I found out. Now, again, this is 2011. Things may have changed. Real question on the table is, have those numbers changed one way or the other? Especially considering this last year and a half pandemic, almost 2 years now, right? Like this pandemic era, did that add to the issue or subtract from it? And are the expectations that Black men be stepfathers, did that increase or decrease with the pandemic? That'd be interesting to see, right? Well, let's continue. So another report I thought you guys might find of interest. This is a piece. Here, I'll put each of these in the chat. So you can have it. CDC report on fathers' involvement proves that Black dads are most involved, and the Pew Research Center reports that the role of the American dad is changing. Right? And what's interesting about this is they have these bullet points. They had 6 of them, right? From the CDC, talking about changing definition of fatherhood. It says here are 6 facts, right? Let me see if I can enlarge this a little. Apologize if you can't see it that clearly. Number 1 says over 50% of moms and dads report that parenthood is an essential part of their identity. Okay. Number 2, dads are spending more time on childcare and homework than in years past. Number 3, 48% of working fathers would rather be home with their children instead of working. 58% of moms and dads ranked values and morals higher than discipline, emotional support, and income when asked, which was extremely important for children. Right? Number 5, 70% of Americans say it's important for the baby to bond with both mom and dad. Right? And then we get to the last one, number 6. This is a CDC observation. Black fathers, 70%, were most involved and likely to have bathed, dressed, diapered, or helped their children use the toilet every day compared with white and Hispanic fathers. So we're stepfathers to the greatest degree, and Black fathers do the most out of each group of men to stabilize and raise children. Interesting. Okay. So we're sought after the most to be stepfathers, and apparently we're damn good fathers. How often have you heard that about Black men? Curious. Even around Father's Day. I don't know too many communities that when you get to Father's Day celebrate men not being fathers. And yet, statistically, we seem to be doing better at what's expected most in terms of being fathers, helping out. Now, again, this was not a social expectation several decades ago that men be able to provide this, that men play this role, right? This was not a social expectation. Excuse me. Okay. Let me get back to full screen. There we go. It was not a social expectation, but Black men responded pretty quickly in terms of the adapting change of fatherhood and social expectations of men and families. Black men seem to change the most. But this flies against the very narrative of how Black men are described in popular media and social media, for that matter, where people are still using, outdated tropes like toxicity and whatever to describe Black men, when even the CDC acknowledges Black men are actually doing better than other men in terms of parenting roles, right? Well, let's look at another one. Let's see. I mean, we're trying to use data to just kind of give us a sense of what men are navigating and dealing with when it's expected of them to give of themselves without qualification, without hesitation, without reflection, and they're shamed if they decide they don't want to do it in terms of serving as either stepfathers or continuing to raise kids that they were lied to about the children's parentage. Now, for the sake of clarity, yet again, I don't shame a man either way, but I damn sure suggest he should have the damn choice. And if he decides to walk away to go find a family of his own, okay. But here's another one that I thought was interesting. This one comes out of the New York Post, and I might get some pop-ups, so forgive me if I do. This was done in the UK. Came out December 28th, 2021, just a few weeks ago. Almost 1 in 10 moms isn't sure who fathered their baby. This was a poll performed in the UK. 1 in 10. 1 in 10. Right? Nearly 1 in 10 mothers do not know who fathered their child, according to a surprise new poll in the United Kingdom. The question about paternity identity was included in a broader survey about lying commissioned by Top Morning Casino and released on Monday. The company surveyed 1,000 British moms. Now, this is interesting because if you guys saw my short video the other day where we were reading about, singleism, right? We were reading about Black women choosing to be single. It came from a study of like 24 women. But this was a study of this was a survey of 1,000 British mothers, right? Finding out that 7.8% admitted to lying over the biological lineage of their children. Yeah, I'm gonna let you sit with that for a second. Sit with that. 7.8% admitted to lying over the biological lineage. Now, understand the key word in that to me is admitted. Admitted. That means they chose to state on a survey that they lied. We were shocked, a rep for Top Morning Casino said on their website of the poll results. This means there are potentially 2.1 million couples in the UK where the father isn't the biological one. An identical study of American moms has not been conducted, but frequent polls about paternity identity or paternal identity have taken place over the years with varying results. Australian documentary series Who's Your Daddy, released in 2014, referenced reports that up to 30% of paternities are misattributed. So, according to this Australian documentary series, released 8 years ago, reports up to 30% of paternities are misattributed. So in the UK, we're talking about 1 out of 10. According to this Australian documentary series, 3 out of 10. But you're supposed to shut up and do it. If you're already a father and one of your children isn't yours, or more than one, shut up and do it. And the excuse given, well, the kid's already yours. You've already put in time. That's your child. Well, yeah. And as a father, I can understand that argument. But how dare you to try to shame me into not actually taking the time to decide which I should have the right to do. Decide if whether or not I want to continue to be in this situation. I had men reach out to me just in the last 24 hours. One brother in particular said, look, I am very serious about, I want my own family. I want to see my blood. I want to see my grandfather's face, my father's face, my mother's face in my son or daughter. And I want to see what happens when they grow up. I want to see what they become. That's a human thing. But strangely enough, when it comes to Black men, you're supposed to remove that human thing, shut up and do whatever it is that, she imposes on you. Why? Because it's more convenient for her. Word. Interesting. Let's continue. Sociologist Michael Gilding, who appeared on the program, said shocking statistics began circulating in the UK media during the 1970s, but were never backed up by adequate research. Gilding told the program that the real percentage is likely to be far lower, both in Australia and the United States. Yeah. Women are the primary consumers of quite a few things that are media driven. Pissing off a bunch of women is something most industries don't want to do. One of the things we're seeing now is industries are tripping over themselves on Twitter and everything else, trying to sell anything they can. And you're gonna cater to the number one demographic that's consuming your goods. So of course you don't want that kind of thing out there. You don't want to suggest that this is rampant. You want to suggest that it's a small thing, and these surveys are just accidents. All right, somebody playing with the numbers. Anyway, after analyzing data, Gilding estimates that the number is less than 10%. Meanwhile, a 2005 study by the Journal of Epidemiology and Community Health estimated that 4% of American fathers were raising a child that they did not know was not biologically their own. Notice how interesting that is? The raw surveys told us anywhere from 1 out of 10 to 3 out of 10. But, Now all of a sudden it's down to 4%. Why do you think that is? Because if men collectively said, I'm sick of this shit, and stopped, it would be a problem. If you look at a woman's life, women tend to live longer than men, right? Right? They tend to earn less, live longer, take up more public resources. On top of that, when you add in the last 30 to 40 years, a desire for them to be independent of marriage, independent of, having to depend on men, what you end up having is women that end up needing government resources for a much longer period of time than any other demographic. That's expensive. So if you remove the men that pay for this reality, and I mean this reality, when you hear, this is something I want to get across to you. When you hear somebody say how independent they are, a couple of friends of mine, we perform these informal studies. We have these conversations where when we meet people, women in particular, who claim how independent they are, we just ask questions and listen. And it usually doesn't take longer than the third question to find the man that she's depended on, father, ex-boyfriend, stepfather, whoever it is, friend of the family, uncle, even sons, even grandsons. There's usually a man who is the independence. He's the mechanism for her independence. There was even though I'm not using this as evidence, but it's funny it came up. There was a movie Jennifer Lopez did a few years ago where she wanted to be an independent mother and she got pregnant, and the guy kept trying to marry her. And she was like, no, I want to be like my mother. She didn't need anybody. And at the end of the movie, the mother turned out, she was like, look, she got married at the end of the movie. And she said, no, the guy you've known for years, who's been my friend, he's been holding me down for decades. I've not really been independent. He's been holding me down. And I've seen this in families. I've seen it. Men who did no public credit, no public acknowledgement, paying for car repairs, paying for bills, covering the gap between what she has and what she doesn't, not getting any fanfare or public acknowledgement. He is actually the means by which she's independent. But again, part of the agreement is he can't say that publicly. It would embarrass her. And that's not acceptable. And this is something that men, I think, are taught, particularly Black men. You need to support this role and play this role. And continue to play it. And maybe one day she'll give you respect. Maybe one day she'll give you cooperation because you've spent all this time sacrificing to earn those things, that if you continue to do it, maybe she will. Even if she marries somebody else, keep giving her gifts, keep helping her out with problems. Maybe she'll see the light and leave him and come get with you. And I've seen that shit happen. He wasn't any happier when he finally got her. It just meant that he had another set of responsibilities. They were increased. He smiled less. But we're socially kind of we're socialized to please women and children, for that matter. I've experienced it. Yeah. It fills you with certain kind of pride to know that everybody in your household is doing better because of you. So we do it. Damn the cost, right? I think this is the last part of the article here. No, it's 2 sentences left. So while the top morning casino survey revealed a relatively high percentage of British women may have lied about their baby's paternal identity, it also uncovered that men lie more than women. The survey found that more than half of men, 50.2, admit to lying on a daily basis, while just only 36% of women admit to being untruthful every day. Yeah, that's bullshit. See, what they're saying there, they didn't tell you that they switched what he was lying about, what the subject was. They just made it about lying. So they flattened it, right? So we're just going to flatten it. And somebody actually did a video on this earlier. They linked it to my account, and they used that Chris Rock piece where he talked about the difference in how men and women lie. Men lie about everything, where they've been, what they did, even if they didn't do anything wrong, they just lie. Women's lies are, it's your baby, right? That's essentially what they just did in this article. And my suspicion is they did it because they didn't want to piss off women. They're women, they're female readers. So first, the first layer is to say, here's what the stats say. The second layer is to say, yeah, but they're probably too high. The third layer is to say, yeah, but men lie too. We're not going to say about what. You know, he went to lunch with a woman. He texted somebody that, you know, she may not like him texting. He spent a pair on some Nikes, that spent money on some Nikes he wasn't supposed to spend, whatever. It could be anything. But they're going to equate that to her lying about who's fucking I'm sorry. It a bit disingenuous. But the first point we observed was that Black men, highly sought after to be stepfathers, and we're told not to question that, to accept it. Second point we found out is that Black men tend to be better fathers altogether. Third point we're finding out here is that fathers are often used to cover either her mistakes or really her manipulation. He's convenient. I had a good brother reach out to me last year, and this brother was literally, if you met anybody that was born to be a father, you ever see those coaches that don't have any kids, but they love kids to death, and you know they would be a great father, but for circumstances, one way or the other, they just never were able to get into position to have kids of their own. This brother was that all day. Still is. Still is. He has a natural fathering spirit. And I know he does, because game recognized game. I got the same thing. I tend to father people. It's just my energy. He does the same thing. And he found out that a woman lied to him about it. But it wasn't the same kind of traditional lie. It wasn't that he was in a relationship. She said it was his child. It wasn't his. No, it was a woman who was married, who eventually married somebody else. Right. So they got together one night. She didn't tell him that she had an argument with her fiance. They broke up. You know, people break up for a couple days. They broke up for a few days. She slept with him, went back to her fiance, got married, never spoke to my boy after that. Years later, he finds out almost accidentally that she had a son. And when he had a chance to see a picture of the boy, he sent it to me. Looked dead on like him. And I'm not one to use that as pure evidence, but shit, that boy, if I didn't know any better, I would have thought it was a picture of him. And he has such striking features, you know, the brother I'm talking about, he has really striking features. They're not normal. They're not something you see every day. They're very striking. Handsome brother, but very striking features. And this boy had him down. That woman lied all day. Wouldn't even return his calls. Nothing, right? Because it would upset her family. She found a man who was taking care of her. She wanted to stay in the relationship. Lied to him. And that kid is in his mid to late 20s. Not knowing. Got a whole family that looked just like him. He's not knowing. Shout out to Shay. Hey, how you doing, lady? Yeah, paternity tests need to be mandatory. Yeah, straight up. But all right, so let's look at the next piece. These are a couple academic pieces. I'll kind of get through these a little faster. This one you can find in a journal of Divorce, Remarriage. And it's entitled African American Stepfather Stepchild Relationships, Marital Quality, and Mental Health. I'm just going to read the highlighted portion here. And hold on, I will, you know what? Let me put, I don't know if I pasted the other one. So I'm going to paste the report in the comment section for 1 in 10 women in the UK lying. And then a couple of academic pieces, you know, I'll put in there as well. So this one reads, using data collected from 149 recently married African-American stepfathers, structural equation modeling revealed that when stepfathers reported more positive relationships with their stepchildren, they also reported more positive marital quality and a higher frequency of positive marital interactions, relationship solidifying activities. And that in turn was associated with stepfathers experiencing fewer depressive symptoms. Sounds like a mouthful. It's not really. I'll sum it up in a second. More than 4 in 10 American families today are step families. Not only are step families very common, they're complex in both structure and function. For example, step families face challenges such as negotiated roles, deciding who makes the decisions in the family, developing positive step-parent-stepchild relationships, and sharing parenting responsibilities between two sets of parents, biological and step. Consequently, boundary ambiguity occurs when roles in step families are unclear. Unclear roles can have a negative impact on step-parent-stepchild relationships, which in turn may negatively impact marital outcomes and stepfathers' mental health. The present study focuses on African American stepfathers for several reasons. First, although African American men are nearly twice as likely as African American women to be step-parents, the research on African American stepfathers is scant. Second, African American men are especially at risk for depression due to their disproportionate exposure to stressors such as racial discrimination, unemployment, and poverty. Although some studies have reported that there are no racial differences in mental health, other studies report that African Americans in general experience significantly high levels of psychological distress. Recently, a 2012 report released by the Office of Minority Health indicated that African Americans are 20% more likely than whites to experience serious psychological distress. In addition to being a major health concern, depressive symptoms among African American men, especially fathers, is destructive to the family environment. Now, look, let me just sum this one up because I don't want to go through the whole paper. Basically, what they're saying is Black stepfathers are happiest when they get along with the kids because getting along with the kids translates to getting along with the wife, right? There's an inverse to that, however. His depressive symptoms go up if the relationship with the kids don't go well, and thus the relationship with the wife begins to deteriorate. So, what does that mean? Well, that means basically, when it comes to us, stepdaddy happiness and depression depends solely on the relationship with the kid. That's the heaviest influence, apparently. Because if you don't get along with the kid, the mother is not exactly excited about that, right? So we stepdad the most. We apparently father the best. Our stepfathering is necessary for women, especially if they're manipulative, exploitive, or irresponsible. And we're happiest when the kid is happy because then the mother's happy. So our happiness is dependent upon the child's feelings about the dynamic. Let's look at another one. We only got 2 more. I'll be brief. This one is entitled Involvement in Child Rearing and Firm Control Parenting by Male Cohabitating Partners in Black Low-Income Step Families, Forecasting Adolescent Problem Behaviors. Right? This is found in Behavior Modification, right? Journal of Behavior Modification, right? Written by Rex Forehand, Justin Parent, Andrew Golub, Megan Reed, and Nicole Lafko. And so it reads, cohabitation is a family structure that is rapidly increasing in the U.S. The current longitudinal study examined the interplay of involvement in a youth's daily activities and firm control parenting by male cohabiting partners, MCPs, on change in adolescents' internalizing and externalizing problems. In a sample of 111 inner-city African-American families, adolescents report on involvement and parenting by MCPs at wave 1, and biological mothers reported on adolescent problem behaviors at waves 1 and 2. His significant interaction indicated that low involvement and low firm control by MCPs at wave 1 were associated with the highest level of internalizing problems at wave 2. An interaction did not emerge when externalizing problems served as the outcome. Findings indicate that male partners play an important role in parenting adolescents in cohabitating families and should be considered potential participants in prevention and intervention programs. Again, another mouthful, I know. But basically what they're saying is that fathers, even stepfathers, bring order. They bring order. That order is a benefit and serves a role in the child's sense of well-being and their capacity, right, to internalize problems. So when the stepfathers played a role that was more involved and involved firm control, there are fewer internalizing problems. Right? So what does that mean? Basically, what that means is we bring order that helps the kids develop and therefore should be respected as such. And the last one that we're going to look at tonight. And this is just a surface level, survey of step parenting, but we're going to see what the data says. This is from a piece you can find in the Journal of Family Issues entitled Parenting Practices and Child Adjustment in Different Types of Households, a Study of African American Families. I'm just going to read the first couple sentences. The article uses a sample of 867 African American households to investigate differences in parenting practices and child outcomes by type of household. Results indicate that mothers provide similar levels of parenting regardless of family structure. Secondary caregivers, however, show a great deal of variation in quality of parenting. Fathers and grandmothers engage in the highest quality parenting, stepfathers the poorest, with other relatives falling in between. Now, why would stepfathers be the poorest in relation? Now, understand, that doesn't mean stepfathers' roles are poor. It means it's poorer than the biological mother, father, and grandmother involvement. So what does all of that mean? It means that stepfathers don't have a lot of incentive and yet still make a significant contribution to a child's well-being and family structure. And he's happier when the child is happy because it means the mother's happy and the relations tend to go fairly well. But he's not as invested as the father because it's not his child. And we understand why. Anybody that's been in a step situation knows, as a man, you're expected to provide. You're expected to even pay people's way through college. But at the same time, right? At the same time, you can't discipline that child. Oh, we hear that it's expected that you discipline the child, but let that child act up and watch what happens. This even happens in programs where mothers bring their children for Black men in professional programs to help discipline and guide. I don't care if you're talking about disciplinary programs or putting them out in juvenile detention centers, or if you're talking about even getting uncles to step up and play father roles because the father's absent. What I hear from men often, and even including rites of passage programs, what I hear from men most often in that situation is that when he began to push back on, especially a young boy, daughters, that's a whole different thing. You're a stepfather dealing with a daughter, you might as well be under FBI, CIA investigation at all times. But for men dealing with sons, other men's sons, one of the things we notice is that women will come get their sons when things get difficult. It doesn't even matter. You could be a stranger that she hired to help. You could be part of working in a facility that's there to help. You could be an uncle. You could be her brother. And she sends your nephew because he's getting out of line. But when things get difficult, she's more often than not willing to withdraw him because things are difficult. Things are challenging for him and he doesn't like it. And then when he gets a little bit older and he's completely out of control, she'll try to bring him back. And at that point, men point out a particular type of social fatigue where they don't even want to be bothered. They didn't want to be bothered. I could have helped him at 6. Helping him at 16 might get me in jail. But anyway, that's an exaggeration a little bit. But at the end of the day, that's kind of what we see going on. So what we're looking at, all in all, examining these different cases, is that the expectations on men serving as stepfathers or even stepfathers in their own familial households, because, one of the children or more than one are not necessarily his and he's been lied to about it. Now, some would say, well, he's still the father. I can feel you. But some men don't feel like they're still the father, especially because they've been lied to. But my point is, regardless of whether or not he's expected to raise kids that aren't biologically his that he's been lied to about, or he's come into a situation where she has kids, the expectations are the same. Give of your emotional labor. Shut up. Accept it. You're not going to be able to discipline, but you are expected to pay all expenses. My expenses are conditional. Your expenses are mandatory. But in public, we're equal, and we're Beyonce and Jay-Z. In private, you better handle all of this stuff. And I may help, or I may not. This is what a lot of men are experiencing. And still, Black fathers tend to be doing the best. Even stepfathers are significantly improving the quality of child well-being. We do it best. We do it the most. Still not honored or acknowledged for that. And yet, what we're finding out is our happiness, if you're a stepfather, depends on the child, which can be very difficult to navigate, right? Even though you're bringing order that helps the children in the long run, still difficult to navigate. You know, I had a woman reach out to me, just yesterday, wanting me to bring order to her household. Told me she passed out at work, working too hard. And I found it interesting because people will call you for your guidance, support. They won't offer you anything in return. I have no problem asking for it though. But I've been in that trap before. You provide it, it's welcome until she feels that things are at a stable level, and then it's all about how she's done everything herself and how you were just a wall painting or whatever. You were there, but she really did it herself. And if you get too uppity, she'll cuss you out, leave, and then call you again when shit has gone to hell. Not acknowledging that you were actually the reason that things were stable. She's acknowledging it technically by calling you, but not outwardly. And the more you stay outside of it, the worse you see things get. And if you jump back in, you put it all back together again, they're appreciative for about 30 seconds. And then it's all about how independent and powerful. Look, I've seen this dance a lot. I've seen it a lot. And what I can say is for Black fathers or Black stepfathers, the amount of respect extended is very low in our community. Sacrifices made are not acknowledged in many ways, downplayed. And when discussed by academics, shout out to Torrin Walker, whose article I talked about earlier, he's absolutely right. It's primarily described in terms of toxic masculinity, fathers and men attempting to dominate and oppress others in the community, most particularly women and children, and of course, LGBTs when they have time on Sundays. All of these narratives that come into play. But even statistically, we're finding out that Black men are actually exceptional. Has that changed how we're seen in our community? Interesting question. Academically, I'd say how Black men are referred to, no. But you guys would be the ones to tell me how that actually plays out in interactions on a daily basis. So I'm going to drop the link. Hope all of that was clear. It's the first week of teaching for me, so I'm a little all over the place. I apologize for that. So I dropped the link in the chat. I'm going to have to go. I think the way Facebook is linked up, I actually have to go to the presentation in Facebook and paste it in the comments there. Some reason it doesn't come across. So I'll put it in there as well. Let's see. All right. So I'm going to ask you to be brief. I'm going to ask you to comment on anything that I've covered or share a story that's relevant. And I emphasize relevant to the topic tonight. So either comment on something that I presented or, a concept that you can relate to, or share a story that's relevant to the topic. Let me bring on Brother Malika. What's up, man?
Peace, good brother. How you doing today?
Doing well, man. How about yourself?
Good. This topic hits home, man.
Yeah? What's going on?
I'm going to give a story.
Okay.
In my own family, my grandparents have 5 children.
Okay.
But my mother, who's the oldest, is not my grandfather's biological child.
Mm-hmm.
The other 4 are his, the youngest children.
Okay.
Now, my grandparents have been passed away.
Okay.
But I've noticed, and like how you said, in being Black families, you see how the way the matriarch runs the show. My
Mm-hmm.
grandmother ruled the roost. My
Mm-hmm.
grandfather was 6'3", weighed about 230, 240.
Mm-hmm.
If he wanted to, he could break my grandmother's neck.
Yeah.
But I saw the disrespect that she had. And as you know, you go through your red pill awakening, and I just realized the disrespect and how the way she treated him. And
Mm-hmm.
then I remember just saying, this was a man that married you with a child already. And this is back
Yeah.
in the 40s. My grandma had my mother at 19.
Mm.
Then she met my grandfather and got married at 21.
Okay.
So if anybody is not our generation and older,
Mm-hmm.
you know, a woman, but therefore a Black woman having a young child,
Mm.
teenage, was very taboo and
Right.
very, very, very looked upon.
Right.
So in essence, you had a man who took you and this child and helped you raise this child and four others.
Mm-hmm.
And you just treated them at times like shit.
Right.
And like how you said, um, just you're expected.
Yeah.
And I just remembered the certain things that she was saying, do, and I was like, you couldn't give this man respect, but it's expected. You're expected to do X, Y, and Z. Now I can understand you're doing your duties as a husband, but this was a man, he wasn't a perfect man,
Right.
but he did his due diligence as a father, a husband, a grandfather.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But just seeing how the way it was expected, I was like, no, no, it's not expected. He
Right.
took you and this child on.
Mm.
But then I saw how the way it trickled down through the generations.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I are Gen Xers, and this
Right.
is where it became really solidified.
Right. It was an expected social norm. Like I told you,
Exactly.
I didn't even imagine marrying a woman that didn't have kids.
Exactly. I
Never
did. Hey,
once.
can I tell you something? You said something about choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote this little note. You're not allowed to have a choice, meaning
Mm-hmm.
Black men, you,
Mm-hmm.
us. We're not allowed to have a choice because as slaves
Mm-hmm.
or your word conquistadors
Mm-hmm.
are not allowed to have rights of choices.
Mm.
And also Black women's rights, conveniences, their images and their desires will always be paramount over our choices.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where you see the paternity fraud situation, you see the stepfather situation, even the cohabitation. A woman can have more money. She can be effeminate. She can do whatever she wants. Her body, her choice. But you still have to adhere to gender roles.
Right.
You still have to come up with money. You said this. Her money is her money, but your money is our money.
Yeah.
And I even dating, I realized that.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a funny thing, man. After you get finished dating, or after you get finished into a relationship, or after you get married, now you get the old bait and switch.
Mm-hmm.
You you said you can do anything you want. You're expected to raise this child, to help this child, to feed, clothe, to protect it, give this child guidance, give that fatherly love. Like you said, you gave statistics. Black fathers, whether they're stepfather or biological father, we as Black men, we're doing our job, but we're never known to see it. But
Mm.
the biggest problem is, and Kevin Samuels has said it, and even Angry Man has said it, you
Mm.
can't put your finger on that child.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
These Black women want, you want the cream of the crop. You want a Kryptonian. You want an
Right.
Asgardian. You know, you want a shield agent. You know, you want James Bond. You want an X-Men.
Yeah.
You want him to do anything and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, he can't discipline your child
Not at all.
until
not outside of what she deems acceptable, which is really situational, right?
But the
It's
thing
like
is, you
case
can't
basis,
discipline him
right?
until he starts to mature and he starts to smell his own piss. That's when it's your problem. That's when it's an issue. He's in the house now, but the thing is, you created this Frankenstein's monster.
Mm,
But now, when he's set in his ways, because now he has your mindset as a woman.
hmm hmm
But now I have to come in as an uncle, as a cousin, or as a big brother, or as
right.
any masculine man to try to set your child right, but to try to right your wrongs.
Mhm.
But even if you point that around and say, this is your doing, they don't want to accept the transgressions that they've done. And going back to my grandmother, I'm like, but you treat this man like shit for the mistake you made with another man. He did not have to do that. You can't give the man just respect because you don't see him as that.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's when it comes down. That's when I had to realize this is the biggest problem. We're expected to do that,
yeah.
no matter whatever it is. Even if we're not in a romantic relationship, if you have a sister, if I have any, we're expected to pick up the pieces. Like I said to you before, black men, we are to have a lifetime supply of crazy glue, a
hmm
push broom, dustpan, and a toolbox and some overalls and just stand on the side.
Yeah, yeah. And you're not supposed to not only have standards. There's also no such thing as any particular set of values in terms of dating. And so
Exactly.
what I mean by that is you can actually be. Shout out to Henry. Appreciate that support. You can actually be fairly well to do with no
Mhm.
children. You built yourself up from nothing, and you can run across, and I've experienced this. You can run across someone who anywhere from 19 to 60 that has 1 to 6 kids, no money, no job, and the idea is that you're supposed to come in and fix this simply because she exists. Now, that means that the way we conceptualize this, any black woman can have any black man. But when you turn around and say that you want a certain type of black woman that's beautiful and this and that, now you got to have conversations about, well, you don't deserve any kind of woman. So it's this weird kind of double standard. Well,
Mhm.
women of any level can have men of any level, but when men want something, no matter what it is, the idea is somehow you have to qualify, you have to earn her time, even if you're a lawyer and she works at 7-Eleven. Doesn't matter. So it's this weird kind of dynamic. But any closing thoughts? Because I got about 5 people in here that want to contribute. Wait,
Um,
closing thoughts from
Brothers need to be more cautious.
you. Hmm.
Be cautious and realize you have a right to have standards.
Mm,
You have a right to have boundaries. You
mm,
have a right to question a woman, but the most you have a right to have higher expectations for yourself, not just the woman,
sir.
but for yourself,
Yes, sir.
and also to have a higher self-worth. Don't put anybody on a pedestal.
Hmm.
And that's something I had to learn hard as a
Hmm.
black man.
Right.
Um, put yourself first.
Hmm.
And I know probably no, in any situation, brothers, put yourself first.
Yeah.
Because the problem is for the past 40 to 60 years, we've been putting everybody before us, and that's why we're in the situation we're in. But
And
within the past 6 years, we've had the manosphere. We're starting to put ourselves first, and we're having platforms like yours. Now we're having these articles like the L article and all these other articles where women are talking about the manosphere is this and that. No, the
hmm
problem is the grass is being rattled and the snakes are coming out.
hmm
And the thing is, the consciousness is being pricked.
yeah.
And black men are waking up to realize, hold up,
Mhm.
oh, this happened to you, this happened to you. But we're having a form. We're not just
Yeah. Yeah. We're,
talking
we're,
crap to be talking crap.
we're comparing notes.
Exactly.
And so,
But we're can
because much of the time we thought this was just happening to us.
Exactly.
This was an isolated incident. Maybe it happened a couple times here and there, but this is just happening to us. And then when you listen to brothers from New York, from Texas, from Oregon, you know what I mean, from Florida, and then you start getting brothers calling in from Britain and from Australia and from Africa, and then you're like, wait a minute. And at the same time, we're grappling with the values, because when you said a moment ago, in terms of thinking, about ourselves, prioritizing ourselves, we were raised to believe that was selfish.
Yes.
You're not supposed to think about yourself. You're supposed to think about the community, and the community means whatever woman you run across that says she's picked you, you're supposed to be with her because she needs you or she's chosen you. You're not supposed to choose, because you really can't manage a value system that women respect, that you determine in terms of what you want in a woman. You're not supposed to have that mechanism. You're supposed to be given that by whichever woman deems you, worthy of her time.
Can I say one small thing before you let me off, sir?
Go ahead.
Have you ever noticed, before you even got married to your wife, right? And when you were on your own, you start making money and you start living and you were dating, right? And I noticed this, and I talked to a few friends, man, like when we were in our early 20s and we start making good money and even into our 30s. When you're dealing with a woman, you're coming into her sphere. Now, I have no children, but I've always remembered, like, even when I was doing well, doing better than women, or doing just as good as them, your total attention, your own personal sphere of influence totally gets overrun, and you totally take on their mindset and their life.
You're in her frame. Yeah.
And I remember Angry Man talked about that, and that was like a slap in the face, and I was like, wow. And he was like, it's by design.
Yeah. And I think that speaks to the gynocracy. But
yes.
Thanks for coming up, good brother. It's always
Thank
good.
You.
Hopefully I catch you Sunday over there at Artisans.
Oh, definitely. You know I'll be there, brother.
All right, man.
All right. Peace out.
All right. Real quick, I want to shout out Michael, Mogul Maze, Maurice, and Jaman for the Cash Apps and PayPal. Shout out to y'all. Much appreciated. Henry Garner's point, I put it up on the screen, but I wanted y'all to see it. He said, "You preaching tonight, Doc. I experienced the call from my ex you just mentioned years after we broke up, and her son had run away and gotten hooked on drugs. He was 10 when we dated and 17 when he ran away. It was sad. Indeed. I've gotten that call myself. I know what that's like. Let me bring up Martin. Remember, make sure you either reference something that we discussed earlier or a story that's relevant to the topic. What's up, Martin? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah. How you doing, man?
Good evening, brother. Yeah. So I'm a little late to the conversation. But I was having this thought relatively the entire day, and just just as far as the gist of the conversations that we've all been having, it seems as though this kind of correlates to a thought I've been having all day, and it's in reference to the dynamic of the saying that that men ain't shit, right? Black men in particular,
right.
Black men ain't shit.
Right.
And when I hear that saying, I automatically think to myself, okay, if black men ain't shit, then that means the black man's mother ain't shit either, because she's the first, she's essentially his first real human interaction. Like she's the first atmosphere. She's the first universe that he has to adapt to. And I immediately went to, okay, if the black man ain't shit and the black mother ain't shit, that means the black mother's man ain't shit, meaning the black mother's partner or what have you. So I'm thinking to myself, it's almost like a never ending cycle of finger pointing here, and I'm trying to figure out what's the root of all this. What's the root cause of, not taking on full responsibility of our relationships. And
You
I
mean,
think,
who taking on full responsibilities? Just so I'm clear.
I think all parties,
Okay.
men and women, because obviously, when it comes to a child, it takes two to tango. You need the woman, you need the man. Almost all the time, it's going to be a mutual, agreement as far as, okay, we're going to have the child. So there's an equal balance of responsibility, but at the same time, I'm curious as to where is the disconnect coming from, or where is the miscommunication coming from, to where we're constantly at each other's neck. And I'm almost sure that it always has to boil down to, like, just overall education, I guess. Like what is it that makes a man say to himself, okay, this is what I need to mature into, for the woman to respect every aspect of who and what I am. So when we have this child, the child who automatically is inclined to respect the woman as a mother, the child automatically respects the father. And then, like, that whole cycle, like, kind of recalibrates to a healthy relationship. Because I'm not sure exactly what it is, but there's something off there that we're having issues kind of reconnecting on. And I'm just, as it's like trying to reach for Jupiter. It's extremely difficult to pull out the exact issue. And we have such poor communication overall, that it's even challenging to even speak about this to women directly. Like, we can have this conversation as men, relatively smooth, but it's almost like the woman's perspective overrides any type of real conversation that we can have, logically, and without too much emotion involved in it. But it is I believe it is an emotional um, atmosphere, because it's happening as we speak right now. So,
Well,
um,
you know, I, I'm not sure if I got the totality of your question, but you're basically asking what broke up the black family. Is that what I'm understanding?
yeah. I'm trying to get like, I'm trying to figure out what is the key, what, like, because like you mentioned, not only are you hearing these things from, like, New York,
Hmm.
Texas, Oregon, Florida,
Hmm.
Africa, Australia. Like, this is like a elephant in the room type of situation that's happening on a global scale.
Well,
And
I
mhm,
think part of what we're looking at is these things didn't happen arbitrarily, and this is what we've been talking about this in these spaces for years. So this is what you ask is not, a quick answer, even if done right, is still not going to pay it due respect in terms of the
mhm,
depth of the question.
mhm,
So, that being said, there's a lot of different ways brothers would approach answering that. My particular approach would be to suggest that one of the most impactful there, I'll put it to you this way. In terms of particularly African American history, there have been particular historical points that have contributed to the families making transitions, right, from one step to another. But when you get to about the 1960s and the 1970s, I think they're some of the most observable, impactful shifts in the black family that take place that we're still reeling from now. And
mhm,
many of those shifts have to do with policy and policy, right? Law that basically changed the dynamic of the household and fundamentally made black men um, replaceable, right?
mhm.
Replaceable, exchangeable. They made
Expendable.
expendable in many ways. And
Mhm,
when you get 3 or 4 generations into that, right, where you actually have families that are told that they can do well without men, And then you have feminist narratives about men being oppressive monsters and that women can live independently and free just with each other. And you really only need men occasionally for sex and maybe semen. When you have these dynamics that take place that devalue men's roles. And then by the time you get to the 90s and the 2000s, and you have this language coming out of the academy that there are no gender roles, everything is everything. Men are just biological bodies, women are just biological bodies, but really what they both are, or whatever they choose to be in terms of their gender construct. And when you have these kind of dynamics that begin to develop and expand in terms of how people receive them, on top of a legacy of underdeveloping Black men and expelling them from the family, the policy, what you end up with is a dynamic where you have a woman that may have seen her grandmother, her mother, her cousins, her aunts, and even her daughter start to pick up these narratives that, as you said earlier, Black men ain't shit. They're just necessary for occasional recreation and reproduction. Much appreciation, Tim, and thank you for supporting the show, especially throughout the stream and the comment section. Shout out to you, Tim. But but again, that's just a tip of the iceberg, and I got several people waiting that I want to bring in.
Yes, sir.
You asked a question that's really quite extensive, but the general narrative of my base answer would be that these are things that are imposed upon from outside of the family that have contributed to changing the outlook, the worldview, and the behavior of those in the family, while Black men are being expelled from the family, especially in terms of importance and narrative. Because remember, the studies that I put up are actually showing, according to the data, that men are valuable. But the reason they had to do those studies is because people stopped believing men were valuable, because the prevailing narrative is that men have no value, that you don't need fathers, you don't need men, you just need people. You don't need a father and mother to have a two-parent home. You just need two adults. Men are expendable, they're not really necessary. These talking points became so popular that you actually have academic studies coming to show, no, men actually have a presence. They actually have an impact on children. They actually have an impact on income. They actually have an impact on family stability and household stability. You had to have those academic studies because the prevailing idea in popular culture is that men are expendable and exchangeable, most particularly Black men. But this is a very nuanced and complicated subject. So I'm only paying it surface level in terms of what I can do in a moment.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you coming up to ask the question, though.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, man.
All right, man. Take it easy.
You too.
All right. Let me get my brother up here. What's up, Hood Scholar?
Yo, what's up? What's up?
What's going on, man? How you doing?
Bruh. Like, I had to jump in because, like, for me, this is just a confluence of a lot of conversations I've been having recently.
Yeah.
And that's why you was in the other what was that? Was that a clubhouse? Not a clubhouse, a Twitter space or
Twitter that Torrin was doing?
Yeah, bro. Like, for me, I think this just provides a something. This contributes to an ongoing discourse with development in Black male studies.
Absolutely.
And that's this particular statement. The way in which Black male studies gives us the language to articulate our experience. So before, actually, it was remember the interview you did with me, right? As I was going through that, thinking about that interview, and then listening to the episode again today, this was the first time, this allowed me to think back through my life and the moments of stability I had. And the few moments of stability I had was when my mom divorced, but she remarried my stepdad.
Yeah.
And so, but he ended up dying, unfortunately. But I realized, I looked at my life, right? And the moment that we got out the hood, we lived in a house that we were renting in the county, was when my stepdad was living.
Yeah.
But this is the key point to this, though, right? I didn't realize this until in my 30s.
Yeah.
Let that sink in, bro.
Yeah.
And then, and this is the part I want to contribute, right? You did a dope job of talking about the stepfathers, but the flip side of this is, where are the fathers? And we go with the narratives, right? So one, let me talk about the narratives. The narratives have been so destructive is that because it's these narratives that have contributed to us not fully understanding ourselves, right?
Okay.
So black men end up believing these same narratives of black men, even though they don't actually explain our experience.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one part. But the other part is this, right? So I was raised by a single mother, with the exception of the times I had my stepfather. But until I grew up and started talking to my father, the only story I had about what happened was the story of my mother.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think
Yes.
I was told and thought about my father?
Yeah, I know.
So listen to how this works, right? So black men get blamed first for not being present in the child's life. And then when you get to the stepfather has to live up to these unrealistic expectations.
Right.
And then there's this whole other thing I'm not even going to, and that's the complex relationship between the stepfather and the father. Because the mother, right? I mean, shout out to my mom. She did what she could. But if I'm being honest, I can say that she kept me away from my father.
Yeah. And
that's something we never talk about, right? We always say that it's the father who's not present. And it's crazy. I was in another online conversation about this, right? And women were literally arguing that it's the father's responsibility to fight to be in their child's life.
Right.
But none of those women said, oh, maybe the mother should not make it so that the father should have to fight in the first place.
Yeah. Even in the 70s, when we started to see, really it starts in the 60s, but when you see men marrying less in the black community and beginning to leave households, the narrative was that black men just didn't care about family, as opposed to actually raising the question, the fact that she has resources and institutions available to her, from family courts to police departments. False paternity charges can be levied. False accusations of sexual assault can be levied. No evidence required. The fact that she can leverage these institutions and control the family dynamic at her whim, that nobody questions whether or not that may have driven off fathers. It's just the narrative is that fathers leave, not that fathers are driven away. And so when you introduce that to the conversation, it's immediately dismissed. You're talked down upon. But really, that's what fathers have been trying to say without, as you put it earlier, without the vocabulary. We didn't know how to articulate it, but that's what men have been grappling with since the 60s and 70s. She's in control of the family and backed by the state. And she can leverage those resources at her whim against him and his wishes, especially if he's trying to take the family in a direction she doesn't like. Now, in relation to what your statement earlier about where the fathers are, according to the data, when we looked at the CDC report on how black fathers, fare and do better than other men in terms of interacting with their children, it's not that they're not present. It's that many of them are not getting married. The fathers are still in their children's lives. They're just not married to the mother.
Yeah, because they count single households not as the father not being present, just where the child lives.
Exactly.
Yeah, bro. That's all I wanted to make. And just a takeaway point that now we finally have this language to be able to say, okay, this is what's going on. And shout out to you and your work and your show, because now not only are we having a language, we're having a platform to get this word out.
Hey, man.
All right, brother. Peace, man.
Appreciate you for supporting, man. You take it easy.
All right, peace.
All right, man. Let me go up and bring in Adam MGTOW. Hey, what's up, man?
How's it going, brother?
It's going good. How about yourself?
Oh man, this is a heavy topic.
Yeah, man.
This is a heavy topic, man. I'm
trying to get to it. Shout out to Broken Blade and Brother Rodney in the chat. What's up, y'all? But hit us with it. Every time you call in, man, you drop something.
I'm gonna be brief. I think I was having a conversation with the individual on the one of the posts you made. I'm not gonna mention the name. Interesting person. What was striking about the conversation is that, as you mentioned before, there's this expectation of MREL, or the male relationship emotional labor. This is expectation, but what I found fascinating was the omission. Right, there's this expectation of that labor without qualifiers.
Okay.
So they didn't. She didn't say, "Oh, well, if the daughter was a good daughter and she really listened to you and she really looked up to you, and she really did." There's no, it's not like she framed it as the daughter was a good daughter, a good child to this man, right? It was just, regardless of how this daughter may have treated you, she could treat you like crap. She could disobey you. She could take your credit card and spend it on, but she could do whatever she wants. But think about this child. And it's funny because you mentioned it earlier that it's this interesting dichotomy where male relationship emotional labor is so valuable, but it's never mentioned as being valuable. So it's, I don't need a man, but then when we're like, okay, well, you don't need us, I'm gonna go. Wait, no, think of the children. You can't go yet. You can't go. Wait, hold on a second. I thought you said you didn't need me. So no, but think of the children. What happened to being a responsible man?
But notice, if you do leave, the story that she'll tell is that you ain't shit. That you left and you didn't care about the well-being of and what happened but no discussion about why you left. See, that's what I was saying earlier about the grandfather who found out that one of his kids wasn't his, right? There's all we hear about the grandfather is he was an alcoholic, he left the family, or he had another family over there. We don't hear the possible reasons why he did what he did. We just hear the shaming, right? That's laced into the narrative of how bad a person he was.
Yeah.
Even though Big Mama is still living in the house that he died putting her into.
Yeah, I mean, in almost all those cases, it's almost always an exaggeration, to the extent that they tell it. And I was thinking about that because, especially with this man who said that he raised his child for 13 years. I mean, you're a father. Many of the brothers here are fathers. Just I mean, I was thinking about you're raising a child for 13 years, changing diapers, feeding the child, teaching this daughter, planning things for the future, working all this overtime to provide. In many cases, you have to work extra, especially in this the current economic environment. Just even the heightened state of vigilance, having a young girl, right? And all these things, and the daughter's not his. And it was funny because the individual on the post said, well, this is just a bump in the road.
Right.
Like,
Right.
13 years is not a freaking bump. What the hell?
No, not at all. Not at all.
It's interesting because you mentioned earlier as well about the paternity and how 10% of women, weren't sure who the father is. But one thing we know for certain is that 100% of women know who the mother is.
Yes,
right?
yes.
But when it comes to men, we don't have that biological privilege, that biological guarantee, right? And so for a woman to say, well, it's not really that big a deal. You should just raise the daughter. I mean, this could never possibly happen to you. That's like a man saying, well, giving birth, that's not a big deal. You just push one out. It's not
exactly.
I mean, it's a complete lack of understanding what it means to be a man.
No, that's true. I mean, look, I got a very close friend that I dearly respect. And I remember, I mean, the brother's, he's adopted, he's got one child, and he's the best father I've ever seen. I remember he called me one day, and there was a question about whether the child was biologically his. I'm trying to be sensitive, and I just kind of generically asked him what he was going to do, and he basically said, I can't go there, meaning I can't test it because the ramifications are too great. So the decision that he had to make to stay sane was to ignore the question altogether. That was the only thing holding him together, because otherwise he might have showed up with a shotgun over somebody's house. You know what I mean? So some men make the decision to never ask the question because they can't handle the possibility. And after, as you said, 13 years, I understand. I understand.
Never getting them back.
It's either I accept this or I take everybody out. You know what I mean? And that's all they can do. You know, so
That's heavy. It's heavy.
It's real heavy. But you know, let me ask you. So, any closing thoughts, brother, before we transition to the next person?
Yeah, I have one closing thought. One thing I was thinking about in reflection to that conversation, you mentioned it earlier as well, is just how this typically is framed. And as a closing thought, I thought it interesting that in this country, when it comes to correcting poor behavior, right?
Mm-hmm.
We normally design laws to punish the perpetrators, and then we create programs for the victims. But whenever men are the victims of something such as paternity fraud, all the blame is placed on him. Well, you should have just found a better woman and wore a condom, right?
Right.
And there's never any talk of any punitive measure for the person, even throughout that whole conversation. Well, the mother's bad, she's untrained, she's unreasonable, but you should be responsible. That logic applies to everything else in the world,
right.
but men. But hopefully, with courses like this and what you're teaching, that'll change how people view us.
Well, I hope so, man, because my goal is not to say don't deal with stepmothers, walk away from kids that aren't yours. I'm not trying to say that. And at the same time, I'm not trying to say stay. What I'm trying to say is you have the right to decide in either damn way. You deserve to be respected. You know what I mean? Because that's not what we were taught. We were taught that in our community, you're supposed to extend and give, just as you said, with no qualifications and whatever she asked for. And really, if you talk to some women, whichever woman asks you to give it, you're supposed to give it. You'd be like, this one's 350 pounds. I'm not attracted to it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Give it to her because she likes you and she wants this for you. And you're like, you ever had a sister set you up with another sister? You be looking at her like,
bro, man, if I went to the store, I can't. It's not enough time. It's not enough time for me to go into that story.
Oh, but you understand what I'm saying. It's
just exactly.
Expectation. You take whatever you're given and you're supposed to shut up and be happy. And it doesn't matter if what you bring is, how valuable it is. None of that matters. You just have to accept what's on your plate. And, brothers are starting to say, no, I'm not going to do that. So I appreciate you coming up, Adam. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, my brother. Have a good one, man. Great show.
Thank you, man. All right. So let's bring on brother AB. What's up, AB?
Hey, what's going on, Dr. T?
How you doing, man?
Man, that brings up a specific story. Then I'll get into the topic. I had an older lady try to set me up with a chick, and I looked at her, and I just wasn't feeling it. I was like, "No, this ain't it."
Right.
I was like, "No," and ironically, she got with a white dude and had twins with him.
Okay. All right.
But onto the subject. It's complicated. As I told you before, I didn't even know my biological grandfather's name until I was 30. Damn. And that was ironically, my mother told me it right before the same year she died. I found out about him when I was probably around 10 or something, because I just asked my father one day, why is my grandfather's last name different from my mother's maiden name? And you should have saw the look on his face. He's like, shit. He's like, okay, this is a situation. And I was like, your biological grandfather died before you was even born. I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah, I had a similar situation with mine. I had a grandfather. I didn't know how he was related. Actually, I had two. I had to ask questions about how they're related. I understand Black life, but I'll tell this to the brothers, especially in the comment section. How many of you grew up knowing your grandfather's full name? Right. I remember once I was at a conference on my campus, right, at Fresno, and I sat next to an administrator. I'll be real quick because I want you to continue. But I sat next to this administrator. She was like she was a higher level administrator in another college on the campus, right? Asian woman. And she was wearing a family crest necklace. And when I asked her what it was, she said, oh, that's my family crest. And she said she could recite her family back for the last 500 years. And I was sitting there listening to her, and like it was a movie. I felt a tear coming down my cheek, and I didn't know why. I was like, what the hell? I was like, what's going on? And when I, sat, after she left, I was sitting there pondering. I was like, oh, okay. In Black families, you're lucky to know your grandfather's name.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting next to someone that can recite her family back 5 centuries and is wearing a crest on her necklace like it's nothing. And it just really blew me away. But I apologize. Go ahead and continue. What were you going to say, brother?
Yeah, I got another story. I wasn't really dealing with this single mother because she was crazy, but I told you about her daughter. Her daughter tried to pull me into the ladies' bathroom, and I had to.
Oh.
And I was like, I told her, look, I'm a guy. This is not appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
And her and her younger sister practically begged me to, can you come home with me? I was like, no, I don't want to deal with your mama. Her mom, this single mother, her mother flat out told me on several occasions, I don't like condoms.
Okay.
And she was already crazy and dealt with abuse. And I keep the whole time thinking to myself, do I want to be on this woman's baby mama list? No. And some years later, the whole thing ended because she tried to accuse me of stalking on Facebook. After that, I was done. I unfriended her. She blocked me. I really don't care.
Mm-hmm.
And I go out of my way to avoid her. Ironically, if I see her somewhere, she'll say hi to me sometimes.
Okay.
But I go out of my way not even to talk to her. And she's married. I go out of my way, and she's had 4 or 5 of 2 or 3 other kids since then. I go out of my way not to talk to her.
Wow.
And she probably and like you said before, she probably told me I wasn't shit, and I'm like, okay, whatever. Good.
And it
is what it is. No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, one of the things about being a stepfather is, especially in this era, right? It's extremely dangerous. Now, I'm going to tell you, as a child, I was sexually assaulted twice, so I am particularly sensitive to kids being violated. Let's just put that on the table. Particularly sensitive about that. But at the same time, becoming a grown man, one of the things I recognize in the last 10 years, especially, is how easily a man's reputation can end with no evidence, purely off accusation. Now, if that's problematic coming from a baseless accusation from a grown woman, how much more difficult is it when it comes from a child who just might be mad at you, or who may be put up to it by the mother? I mean, you saw this recent case with this rapper whose ex-girlfriend said that her little 5-year-old son, that he puts metal screws in the child's anus, and child was apparently defecating blood, and she said her son said this man did this, and so she went out in public media and slammed him, and he took a lie detector test, passed it. Apparently the son admitted, she said the son admitted that it didn't happen. Meanwhile, his public reputation is trash. It can happen that easily. So being a stepfather or in a stepfather position is so fraught with issues. It's so dangerous. And when you add that with a stepdaughter, it's that much more walking on eggshells. There's a lot of risk that men have to navigate, and you do have to truly ask yourself, is it worth it? Now, my answer to the question, is it worth it, is that's solely up to you. And you should choose whatever way you want to go. I will respect your choice either way. But if you do choose to walk away, or whatever choice you make that's not socially accepted, that's frowned upon, where you're shamed, I got a problem with that. Because with the risks that men have to take, you damn well better be able to have the agency to make any choice you make for the best interest of your household and yourself, regardless of what other people may not like about it. But anything you want to say before we close out? Because there's another few people.
As far as the stepfather thing, I don't have an issue with dudes want to be a stepfather, but I'm very careful about that, because I'm not going to say the family members. I've seen it. I've seen the horrors of when a stepfather doesn't give a shit. Okay. I've seen the horrors. And I'm not talking about rape or anything, but when he doesn't give a crap and don't give a crap about the kids. it has a devastating effect on the family.
Oh yeah. The last study I pulled up showed that stepfathers have the poorest performance out of a series of figures: the mother, the father, the grandmother. Yeah, there is that dynamic to it. Yeah, they're
But
not.
I've seen the
Not
divorce, and I've told myself I'll never do that to a woman or to somebody's kids.
Yeah.
Kids. I can't. I can't do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks for coming up, man. Appreciate it.
Sure, no problem. Have a good one.
All right, man. Holla at you probably Sunday.
All right.
Peace. Peace. All right, let's get Micah. Micah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. So something I covered tonight, or a story related to that. What you got?
The paternity test, the false paternity thing, and the stepfather thing, like both of those hit home because I have a friend that actually a brother that we served together, and we were on like 3 deployments together. And when my daughter passed, like he was there for me. You know what I'm saying? So we fought, we bled together, but his father died when he was younger, and he ended up, getting married, and he made it to the rank of E7. I got out before him, and he ended up finding out that his 16-year-old wasn't his. And when he confronted, his wife about it, there's something that a lot of military people, like, they know about this, but on certain bases, there are women that were married to service members, and they teach, some of the wives that they are willing to learn, like how if you divorce your husband, you can get his retirement and all of this other stuff. And when he approached her about it, she like made a scene. She left. She filed for divorce, and she was saying that he has PTSD, which he did, he did, and she was saying he was violent, and she used that stuff. And upon him like realizing that the 16-year-old wasn't his, and I remember like he used to tell me like, hey, both our sons gonna hang out, and we brothers, so they gonna be like nephews and everything. And he just couldn't take it, and he killed himself. So with the paternity fraud thing, like from that post, like it just made me think about him, you know what I'm saying? And with the stepfather thing, my mom had a son from her first marriage. My father had a son in me. And like everything that my dad went through behind my brother, it really, and honestly, it was a waste. It was a waste of time. It was a waste of energy. And I was like, dang. So me looking at that situation, because it was close to home, it really showed me that, maybe for me, being a stepfather would never be, a viable option. You know what I'm saying? Because of that, he could punish my brother, but it could only be to a certain extent. And then to see how my brother is 8 years older than me, and I was the baby till my little brother was born. But when it comes to the birthright, like, dang, man, like I had to take care of him.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I'm expected to take care of him, or my mom left behind. I got a house that I have to manage. And she has said, like, if he ever gets in trouble or he ever gets locked up, put this up, you know what I'm saying, for him to help him. I'm like, what about all them months of this mortgage that I didn't fit the bill for?
Wow.
So yeah, it just made me think about that. Thanks for having me. And, I love you. I love, all the brothers in the chat, BGS, and, everybody. Man, y'all, I donate when I can, but y'all got a special place in my heart.
Man, I love you too, brother. Keep your head up out there.
No doubt.
All right, man. Peace. Okay, let me bring brother Artisan up here. What's up, man?
What's up, doctor?
How you doing?
Man, I'm doing all right. That last brother's story just really, look, sitting here listening to all this that was going on, I had at least 5 or 6 stories just from personal experience. From personal experience happening to myself and to guys around me. So that's why I like that you're doing this, and you've actually, to me, blown the lid off of this emotional labor stuff, because being a Gen Xer is tough. I was going through all of this stuff, and I was having these same, angst about what was going on and what I was seeing, but there was no data out there about this stuff.
Yeah.
When I was 19, 20, and I'm a young father, seeing how this shit is moving, and people say, well, yeah, I'm pregnant, you the daddy, and you can be here or not, it don't matter. And seeing how this stuff all would roll regardless, it was a real eye-opening situation. It really changed me in a lot of ways. And knowing and not being able to explain to people, or trying to explain to them, like, this is the things that are going on. This situation is damn near criminal. It's like, oh, you're just making it up. You just being weak or whatever. It's like, no, there's something actually going on here. So, 20 years later, now the data is here. You can actually see this stuff. And it's like, well, thank you.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you putting it out there.
Yeah. No. I mean, we need to hear it. That's why I want to connect what we're seeing in these charts to men's actual experiences. They go together. But you're absolutely right. I didn't see this stuff even in college. This was not. I mean, you and I grew up, in the era where talk shows were all about women.
Yep.
So when you did see academic work presented to the public, it was often filtered through catering to women in pop culture and in media. So we didn't hear these studies. We didn't, we didn't have this information, like you said.
No, and it was in the popular culture too. It was in the movies and everything. Like, oh, you just got to be there. You just got to step up and do it. And it's like, but you're not actually holding this woman responsible for anything that she's actually done. It's like, why am I just supposed to pick this up? And that's why it seems like it's such a groundswell that it took 20 years to get to the point where a lot of people in our age group is like, yeah, we've been through this. And this has not been a cool situation. I mean, just a quick story to relate 2 points. I was just talking earlier about me and my son's stepfather. Now, me and my son's stepfather have a really cool relationship. I've always said that if I'd have met him before I met my son's mother, me and him would still be tighter boys. We wouldn't have had to go through that couple of years where she had him there as a blocker, filling his head with all this bullshit.
Right.
That, oh, he did this. I'm just the worst man in the world. And then he get to know me and said, this shit's not matching up. You don't seem like this cat.
Right.
And it wasn't until they got divorced and we were able to actually sit down and have a conversation that he was actually man enough to come up and say, man, I was trying to support my wife. I thought I was doing what I should have been, but it was never matching up what she was telling me and how you were acting and how the son was acting with you. She's a single mother with 2 kids. She's saying whatever she got to get somebody in there to help her take care of 2 kids.
Yeah.
So me and him were cool.
It's hard to tell another man the way she's talking about me is the way she's going to be talking about you in a minute.
That was the joke that we had between the two of us when we finally sat down and talked about this. I told him, I said, look, at the time when y'all got together, I was happy y'all got together because I had my own lady. I had my wife at that time. It was having my second child. I said, I wanted her to get off my ass and leave me alone. If she was happy with you, fine, more power to you. I didn't want to tell you to run from the bear trap because I don't want you to think I was trying to keep her.
Right.
I was happy she was leaving me the hell alone. Like, look, you're going to have to learn just like I had to learn. Right. So we laugh about that. It's a joke between the two of us because after getting divorced from her and coming in and trying to help her take care of her 2 kids and my daughter is your daughter now and all the rest of that. Well, what happened when they got divorced? She pulled the same shit on him. He said, I can't believe this. I just got the mask ripped off the face. I said, yes, I told you. Welcome to the party.
Now you're a mom.
Yeah. Now you can join.
Yeah. Hey. But much appreciated, man. Anything you want to say? Any closing thought you want to extend?
I would just say to brothers, even hearing all of this stuff, I'm not a poo-pooer on relationships. I would just say you got to be a hell of a lot smarter in relationships and guard your seed. Guard your seed like you guard your damn money. If you value that at all, guard it like you guard your life. Because I can tell you, one nut can cost you at least $500K. And I'm saying that because that's how much my son cost me. Okay.
Man.
I can say that. Man. I know how much one semen costs. It's a bit. Okay, so
better carry that hot sauce like Drake.
man, I wish I would have knew that back in the day. I was like, that's what it works. Shit, man, this is what you need. This is why you need dudes around you when you're growing up. You need more dudes. About the hot sauce trick.
Tell everybody where to catch you, man.
You can catch me on Shop Talk Live every Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. And if you're in the Bay Area, you can come by Stand Up Comics and catch me in there on Saturday.
That's what's
Just
up.
don't come through with no bullshit. I ain't in the mood.
All right, man. Thanks for coming
Peace,
up,
Dr. Z. No problem. Bye.
Okay, we got Alex. So tell us something in relation to what was discussed tonight, or a story related to the subject. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I can hear you. So, I have two daughters, and the story triggers me a lot because I've had to fight tooth and nail just to be a part of their life. And keep in mind, I was married, their mom, and some of the stuff that is in the manosphere, I wish I knew when I was 18. Because I got married to her at 25. I was working 2 full-time jobs. I had a plan. I had a mission.
Yeah.
And I soon realized that my mission was not her mission.
Right.
I was raised by in a 2-parent household.
Yeah.
She was not.
Yeah.
And so every step of the way, I received resistance. And eventually, there was some violence. She put her hands on me a few times. And then she called the police, and eventually she told him she hit me. And
she told him. Wow.
Yeah, she was bold enough to she didn't think that there was no repercussions for her. So she thought she could hit me, get me out the house, and then keep the house, and then I'll be paying mortgage. Long story short, she ended up going to jail, and well, what do you think happened to the kids? They still went with her.
What?
Even though she didn't work. And so, the argument was, well, you're working 16 hours a day. How are you going to take care of the kids? So you're putting in all the work. So, of course, the kids went with her, and I received visitation. I had to fight to get what I have now, which is roughly about 40% of the time.
God damn it. Wait. So she went to jail, and you. I'm assuming you had the kids while she was in.
Mm-hmm.
How long was she in for?
She was only in there for a day.
A what?
Yeah.
She was. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Soon as she got locked up, of course, she was bonded out. And
then she got 60% custody.
And well, when we divorced, she got 60% custody. But even before we divorced, she petitioned the judge because she's like, okay, well, he's working, I'm not, so they need to be with me. And so, long story short, I divorced her, and ever since then, ever since before the divorce, I've been fighting to stay in my kid's life.
Wow.
Just the 40% I have right now, because I couldn't do the weekend thing. It was like, okay, hey, this is the standard. You get your kids every weekend. And I'm like, I don't care if that's the standard. Yeah. I don't want that.
Yeah.
I want my kids for equal amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I negotiated to have my kids for a consecutive 10 days out of each month, because I felt like initially getting my kids on the weekend, I was like, wait a minute, I get my daughters, and it's like we're getting to know each other all over again. Damn. And these are babies for the most part, and so until I started getting them for 10 days out of the month, did we really start to develop any sort of relationship?
Right.
And I really started to notice that I left the imprint on my daughters.
Yeah.
And my daughters used to beg me, Daddy, would you please get back with Mommy? Can you please?
Yeah.
Daddy, I want to live with you. And it's heartbreaking to hear your child beg you to come live with you, but there's no power in your hands.
Oh yeah. That's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons in the black male political agenda we've been developing. One of the points we have is that 50-50 custody should be standard at a divorce, and then you negotiate that based on the circumstances of the two people involved. But it should start at a default with 50-50 custody. But go ahead, man.
And yes, I've had to deal with my daughter's becoming unruly with me because of the dialogue that's been spoken of about me.
Right.
Many years I've went without even calling my daughters when they're not with me, because I would call, no one would answer. They would pick up and the phone would hang up. And it's not until my daughter, my oldest, is 17 now. And I think last year she told me, "Oh yeah, Dad, when a lot of those times when you call, grandma or mom will be holding the phone while we talk to you."
Yes.
And when the phone hung up, it was not us.
Right.
It was them.
Yeah.
And it's only now my oldest daughter is, as a result of us becoming closer, she's able to see me becoming the man I was always meant to be. Because I went from working 2 full-time jobs to provide for my family. I ended up supporting her,
right,
even after we separated, because of course she didn't have a job. She was back at her mother's house. I didn't want them there, so I was pulling all odd hours. I was working for a telecom company, and my buddy at the time, he was like, "Hey man, I think you need this opportunity." So he would send me out on assignments out of town, and eventually I got a promotion to regional management, and I was making real good money.
Right.
But at the same time, as I was making real good money, she came back for some more money. So I ended up spending around like anywhere between $1,200 a month on child support, and I did that for many, many years until I said, okay, I thought about it and I decided, okay, I need to do something different.
Right.
And a young lady I was dating at the time said, "You know what? You're very talented, man. You should go back to school."
Okay.
And so I enrolled in a computer science program, which I'm roughly a semester away from graduating right now at 43. Been in this program for 5 years.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, I was making around 70, 80 grand before doing this.
Right. Okay.
I took roughly around I think I had around almost $30,000 in savings. Took that thing, enrolled in school, and I paid my child support and my bills from that 30 grand just so I can take classes full time and work part time. And for the first year, I worked full time and a half full time and took classes half time.
Mm-hmm.
And she said to me, "You're a bum." I'm like, I'm doing this for my daughters, for me, because the raising the children just gets started when they become 18, because they can make one decision that can cost them years of their life. And I've spent enough money to support you.
Right.
And you for many years, for at least 5 years, she didn't have a job. She lived off of my child support, and then she got the help from the government. And she was good. They got her a place to stay.
Right.
She got benefits from the Gateway service. And that was good. There was no need to do anything different for her. The system set her up good.
Right.
While I had the burden of performance to to basically fight to stay in my kid's life. And then finally I petitioned for a reduction.
Okay.
When I was in school, and they reduced it to, I think it was like $200 and something, because of course at the time I was doing work study now.
Yeah.
That the money that I saved up is all gone.
Wow.
Because it I had to spend it to pay child support, my bills, and But they got me. They gave me the reduction, but they fought me for the reduction. They said, "Well, why you was paying $1,200? How are you gonna make sense? How does the judge gonna make sense of you wanting this much reduction?" I said, "Because I'm in school.
Yeah.
I'm in school. I'm doing something better for my kids. This is not just for me."
So that actually worked.
That actually worked, and I did get a reduction.
Okay.
But then after reduction, she lost her house.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, she lost the house that she was in after my reduction was approved. A couple months later, my daughter said, "Daddy, we back at grandma's house now. Mama lost the house." And I was like, interesting. I guess that $1,200 really meant something.
Wow.
And honestly, I thought about it, and I said, you know what? That's not my problem. I have to think further ahead than just right now.
Okay.
The reality is, I felt like I have to build something up so that I can set my future and my kids' future in a path so that I don't have to struggle as much.
Right.
And part of the thing is the system empowers our women to not only just destroy us, but to make it almost impossible for us to thrive. I might be making decent money, but I'm barely surviving.
Well, how old are your kids?
My oldest is 17 and my youngest is 12.
Okay. So in a year, there should be a difference, right?
There's going to be a difference in a year, yes.
And then in a few more years, there's going to be another difference. And even though you had to go through 18 years of that, you're going to finally be able to experience, the kind of independence that she's enjoyed. So, but I don't have to tell you, it's going to pass. And and you're going to be able to navigate your life on a whole different set of terms, and hopefully be able to sit down with two grown young women and have an adult conversation about the reality of your family. But all I'm really trying to point out is you're almost through, bro.
Me and my oldest daughter and I, we talk about it now.
Good.
Because she come to me and say stuff like, "Dad, when I talk to Mom, she doesn't want to hear what I have to say."
Yeah.
And so that, because I've raised my daughters to become to question.
Okay.
To question me.
Yeah.
To question everybody.
I think.
And to follow who walks what they say.
Yeah.
And my daughter has a utmost amount of respect for me now, both of them. And because I walk what I say. They see it in me. They see how hard I work. They see how much I do for them. They saw how much I fought for them.
Yeah.
Then when my youngest daughter was, when she was living in the mother's house, and this is the crazy thing is, the mom, her mom has 3 kids, 1 son, 2 daughters. The son has 9 kids. 9 kids. Grandmother is raising one of them. The other daughter has 5 kids. 4 of the boys still live at grandmother's house, while the mother is gone wherever she's gone. And one of the boys tried to put their hands on my daughter.
Oh, yeah.
So I had to raise up.
Yep.
I called the police. My daughter said, "Daddy," she came to me. She said, "Daddy, so-and-so tried to touch me." I called DFACS. I called the police. And I told him, I said, "My daughters are not going over there until you fix this." I said, "Let's go to the judge."
Yeah.
So they did everything in their power to make it so that I think it was roughly about a month or 2. She had to find another place before my kids went back with her.
Wow.
But I had to give them back because, And
So,
so
even after all that, you couldn't get custody.
no.
Yeah.
No, I couldn't. And the detective said to me, well, he was only a 13-year-old boy. And I said, I mean, the point is not the fact that it's a 13-year-old boy. The point is that my children need to feel like they're protected. And they don't feel that way. And I don't feel that way. So I'm sending a message that someone is looking out for them. Right? And if I can't depend on you to fix it, I'm gonna have to take matters in my own hands.
Yeah. And they don't want that. You don't want that. Because it's gonna get wrong.
And so, now I'm able to now I feel like that I'm getting on the other side of this. And I feel and this may sound cold, but in 2018, after that incident happened with my daughter, and I made us think about it, in our exchange, she came to me and she just broke down, started crying, and reached out to me. And honestly, I pulled back. I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I just pulled back, like triggered me. It triggered me to just push back. I was like, no, I'm not your comfort.
Right.
Not personal.
Right.
I just don't feel like this is deserving of it.
Exactly. And what you did was, which I think was brilliant in that instance, you let her know that the term I use here, your emotional labor is worth something, and she's got to earn that. She hasn't, at the very least, paid you a basic level of respect. The last thing you should be doing is providing for her emotionally or otherwise beyond the letter of the law, right? The last thing you should be doing is providing her any of that, especially when she's extended you nothing that makes it worth you engaging her like that. So no, you said it absolutely perfectly. I'm not your comfort.
It gets even better. There was a point in time, I think back in 2017, where I found out she was trying to go to the military to join the reserves. And they take you out for 6 months basic training. So in a nutshell, she attempted to, like when you're going out to the military, you have to fill out the document for in the event that they have to call you off, you have to name who the party that's going to have custody of the children. And if you have an order with a man, if you have an order out that says, okay, I have joint custody with this person, and you're going to be gone for 6 months, the children should go with me.
She wasn't trying to do it, huh?
She attempted to put her mother's name on those military documents and have me pay child support to the mom.
Wow.
And so I ended up taking her to court again.
Yeah.
And we sat there in the court office and we talked to the judge. And I remember when the judge said, the kids are going to go with the dad. You can go to training. They'll be with him the whole year. And if he wants child support from you, you're going to pay it. And she sat there and put her head in her hand and said, no. And I sat there and I said, wow, it is deep.
And I bet those military plans changed, didn't they?
Oh, she still went to the military.
Oh, she did. All right.
I had the kids the whole year. I put them in the public. I put them in school, and that worked out. And then after the year was over, even after she came back from basic training, I still had the kids.
Beautiful.
And so after
you got a chance to really build a relationship with your daughters.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
And then, after the school year was over, she got the kids back, and I never put her on child support because for me, I feel like, I don't need your money. I just need my kids, my time. I need my kids to feel like they're protected. And I realized that one of the things that occurs with us is there is a school of thought that the children must not feel like you are their protection. because if you can remove the the psychology, because I have a dad in my house my whole life. I saw my dad beat a man down for slapping my sister and shoot at him.
Yeah.
So I always felt like my dad was my protection.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
you wanted your girls to feel that.
I want my girls to feel that. And there's a mechanism in this whole system that tries to rip that security from the children.
Well, but mainly as it pertains to you providing the protection. It's okay if the police provide it at the mother's request or her new boyfriend or her social network, but you can't provide it, without having to do so to the limit of what she allows. But I will say this though, I commend you on how you navigated this. From what I understand, I don't know. As far as the child support thing, to be honest with you, I probably would have had her do it, but not out of a pettiness. I mean, to be honest with you, it wouldn't even be out of need. I would want her to know what the sacrifice is to have to cover that. I want her to understand it. And especially if I know I only got a year anyway, I want you to feel it. I want you to understand what it takes to make that sacrifice, even though that between the two of us, we're going to make sure these kids are good no matter what the courts say, but if they're with me, I would want her to feel that. But that's just me. I applaud you, man, and I might move to the next caller, but thank you for coming in.
I will say this though, after she got the kids back, she took me off child support.
Okay.
So now things are a little bit better.
How long ago was that?
Since 2018.
Okay, so about 4 years. Okay. Okay, so you're not paying anything now?
I'm paying arrears, but that's about it. But
you got arrears, yeah.
I have arrears now because of having to go to school, and I had to pay the $1,200 until the cycle came around. I think it was like every 3 years you can petition for a reduction.
Wow.
So you have to wait until that time comes up.
Well, look, man, shout out to you for handling it, holding it down for your daughters, man, and congratulations on the schooling. I hope things continue to skyrocket for you.
Oh yeah, they're up.
All right.
You're up.
All right, man. Well, thanks for calling in, man.
Oh yeah, thank you.
All right, peace.
Peace.
Okay, let me get Brother Ian. What's up, man?
Oh, peace. How you doing?
Doing well, man. How about yourself?
I'm wonderful. Yeah, man. I didn't even know you were on tonight. I just checked because I was watching another video you were doing with Omawali, but that's another story.
Okay. Right. So we're asking anything on the topic or story related to that. And I know you've dealt with some of this. What's up?
Yeah, I mean, my ex-wife, she remarried. So she had a stepfather for the kids or whatever, and I approved of him, but it ended up though she ended up getting a divorce from him too, so in that time though, as the gentleman before, I went through some of the same things, not really being able to contact them, and the phone games and all that type of stuff. And so at the end of the day though, luckily, I had about 5 or 6 years with them straight, while we were married. My son told me, well, let me say this. My son said that he was always in good hands because of the example I set as a strong figure in his life. He always chose strong men to follow and to guide him when I wasn't there.
Okay.
So that was definitely a blessing, but in a sense though, her thing was she wanted to try to replace me. And she even said that, she sent me an email, when my son got a lot older, maybe even a couple years ago. My son was kind of at odds with her because he realized. So I never told my son all the BS I had to go through with her and all that. But on his own, he realized that she was full of shit, and he said that God was telling him he needed to reconcile a relationship with me.
Wow.
And during that time,
how old was he when he came to this?
that he was, what was he? He was 19.
Okay.
Yeah, he was 19. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's 19. But she anticipated this and sent me a email of, I guess she took a picture of his diary or did something behind his back where he said, he was thankful to the men in his life. And so she thought that was going to trigger me. But it didn't, but that just goes to show, she just had it in to not have me, as a brother said, as the protector and the guide of my own children.
Right.
But she used other men, specifically the next stepfather, to try to do that. I never was at odds with him because he was a nice guy, but even funny, even when I went to go visit the kids, she would try to come on to me, like, man, you are a piece of work, because she always wanted to get back together with me. You know what I'm saying? It was a power trip in her case. She didn't want to submit, because I guess, that was just in me. I never required that, but it was just in me, in my spirit. Okay, if you're going to be with me, I'm going to be leading this thing. And, and I guess that was something that she was at odds with, but I do want to say, did you guys speak about BB King having the 15 kids?
I think I did a short show on that a few months ago. Yeah. And then, finding out that he may not have been the father of, I think to all of them, he may not have been.
All of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it is, I hear stories, I mean, now that we have the Black Manosphere, a lot of life is opening up to where a lot of what we are learning is being validated in our everyday lives, where before we would have missed it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. A lot of these stories, you may have needed to be in the barbershop right at the moment where a given brother is telling his story, but if you weren't there, you missed it. We didn't have a larger network. And as I said earlier, when men start comparing notes, it was like, wait a minute, this is not an isolated incident. Okay. But any closing thoughts before we transition to
well, I mean, I guess the closing thoughts would be is that we have to guard our lineage, and we have to be sure, even when we're talking about becoming a stepfather, we have to be sure that we're going to be allowed to be a part of that lineage, and based on the matriarchal structure, a lot of times, even when you're with that woman, the family doesn't want you. So we have to be careful about, where we place our seed and whose seed we take on, because a lot of times, as Black men, whether stepfathers or fathers, they do not want us to be that father figure in these children's lives.
Yeah. Well, absolutely, man. And I appreciate you coming in. And man, you've been a tremendous help for a long time now in the comments, advocating for the show. So I really want to, thank you for that. But it's good to have you up here, man.
No problem. I love you, bro. So
likewise, man. Yeah. I mean, I love that laugh, man. I'm trying that laugh that breaks me up, man. But you got to get your own show, man. We need Ian to start his own show. So,
hey, man, listen, I'm gonna get my own show, man. I'm gonna get it up, man.
All right, man. Well, it's good to hear from you, man.
You. Good to hear you too.
Peace.
All right, peace.
Okay, and then we got let's bring up Uneducated Lane. What's up, man?
The grand old sage of the manosphere. How you doing, brother?
Trying not to be as old as that sounds, but I feel you.
No, that's just out of respect. And
I'm playing. What's up with you, man? So what you got on this?
So this is a very personal story, so I'll try to be not get emotional telling it. I am the youngest of three, the only boy. When I was 19 years old, my father died in a car accident. The car flipped over. He was going to work to pick up his check on his day off. One car accident killed him. So to speed things through, a few years later, I was got a new job, and I had lost my birth certificate. Now, back in the day, you know, they got to choose what was on the birth certificate, but they had to have the mother's name and, you know, my name. They didn't never have my father's name. So I go down and, you know, I'm from Philly. I go down to City Hall and go apply for a new birth certificate.
Oh, shit.
And, you know, she takes my Social Security card and my mother's maiden name and all that. And she says, and your father's name. And I give her my father's name. And she looks in the file and looks at me and is like, that's not the name on here.
Oh, shit.
And I said, what? She said, that's not the name on here. And I'm like, that's my father. Mind you, I'm 22 years old at this point. And my pop has been passed away for the past 3 years. So she's like, you know, you might want to have a talk with your mom. And you know how Philly is. So,
damn.
The birth certificate came in the mail, and I see the name, and it took me some courage to say something to my mom. Matter of fact, I think I definitely was you know, 23, and I was getting ready to move out. I, you know, met this girl, and we were going to go out and get our own apartment. And I had family said to her, you know, who's this person? And her eyes got real tight. And she said, that's your, you know, your biological father. Now, at the end of the day, this story can go a lot of ways because there's a lot of history in my family. But what I want to say is the story that she gave me was that, you know, and I had knew this story for a time, that my mom and pop had broke up for a couple of years. And then, you know, my dad, you know, he was an alcoholic. They had broke up for a couple of years, and he came back, and they got back together, and we were a family. What was always felt left out of that story was she had another kid who was me by some other dude. And my father wanted her back so bad that he was willing to take care of me and raise me as his.
Wow.
Now, you know, when you know she had me, she had my father's name because she was married to him. So she had gave me, you know, my father's name instead of my biological father.
Okay.
Even though, you know, she had no plans on getting back with him. But I wanted to come up here to say, even through all that, the thing that hurt me the most was he had died, and I never got to thank him.
Wow.
I am the man that I am today because of that man. He kept me out of all kinds of trouble, taught me how to plumb, how to do electric, how to change a tire. Just, you know, my pop was a man's man. And I didn't have to be an alpha little boy. You know, I think you were talking, you hear other dudes talking, you know, they tease kids who had fathers. I was one of the kids who got teased because I had a dad in the house. Wow. You know, I had to be in the house at a certain time. I was going to get a whooping. So, and I'll keep it short. I will say the most important lesson that he taught me was one very unintentional, which is don't be a stepdad.
Wow.
Don't be a stepdad.
Now, just so I understand, because now what happened to your biological? Did you meet him or what?
So my mom, they were supposedly in a relationship. When I was born, you know, I would actually go over their house, the other family's house sometime, and play with. I had others, brothers and sisters, and another grandmother. But as my mom said that he wouldn't do anything for me, and he was a deadbeat, so she just left him alone. Now, I'll say this about my mom. Any narrative that she controls 100%, you need to side that. For sure.
Is he?
Anytime my mom says anything, I'm like, yeah, there's more information on that.
Right. Is he still alive or did he pass?
I have no idea.
You don't know?
I have no idea. So a few years later, she had called me and was like, his brother, she had ran into his brother, which would be my uncle, and said that, you know, that he would like to get in contact with me. But I was on a super proud, I'm going to honor my dad. You know, what I need this joker for? He never did anything. He wasn't around.
Yeah.
And now, you know, later on, you like, but I was listening to someone else's telling the story, and I never got his side.
Right. You know, go ahead.
No, please.
Well, I was going to say, I think it was last year. I did a show about a young brother who's an actor, and I had only ever seen him in the remake of Superfly, but he played the villain, real intense, hothead young man, and but he had a real life situation where, you know, he talked about it. Matter of fact, you can find the video on my channel. I think it was something like when your mother is the devil. And I called it that because he referred to his mother as the devil because he had found out late how much she had lied about. And he eventually got in touch with his biological father, and he went and sat down with his father. And then he told his father everything his mother had said. And his father pulled out a box of receipts, letters, cards, receipts of child support payments. And so one of the things I said in that video is, I'm not saying every father is innocent. I'm not saying every father is great and you know, he's just been missing in your life for some circumstance. He may be everything she said. I have no idea. But I would argue 99% of the time, if you sit down, you're going to learn something you didn't know. And a good portion of the time, you might find that your father can pull out a box of receipts. And I mean that figuratively, about something that he may have contributed that you were never told about. And especially being a grown man, you'll be able to understand him far better than a child would. So you can actually have a conversation and find out what went on, you know, and you can decide if you want to have a relationship with him. Because like I said, he could be everything she said. I don't know. But you're going to learn one way or another something she didn't tell you. But it, you know, but at just those kind of dialogues can open something up, and you might find out more about yourself. And I'll tell you this, the thing I'd be interested in is, even if your father was the monster she said he was, you mentioned he had a brother. You know, he had a brother, you, that you have siblings. I would want to also know about my family. You know what I mean? And to whatever extent, you know, any of them may want to engage, I would want to. Those are things that I personally would be curious about myself. I don't blame you either way if you never wanted to find out, or if you sat down with all of them. I support your decision anyway, either way you go. But if you ask me, I would humbly suggest at least have a conversation and get some questions answered that you've never had answered. You know what I mean? And find out what you can. Especially, look, because I'm a big advocate of this, because, you know, I think the last 2 years, most particularly, we've really got a reminder of how fragile life is. And I'm also a proponent of telling people, man, videotape an interview with your parents, your grandparents before they leave this earth. The last thing I would ever want to find out is your father left this earth before you had a chance to sit down and have a man-to-man conversation with him.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, that, like I said before, that's the most hurtful thing, because I didn't get to thank him, at least.
Yeah.
Now, whatever happened between them three, the one thing I do know is this dude stepped up.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
out of everybody else,
yeah,
no, I wouldn't have known anything. It was from him. I was his kid.
Yeah.
And that's how he treated me, and that's how he loved me.
Hey, man.
He wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
But you know.
No, but salute to him. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said,
yeah, most definitely.
I had some great stepfathers, man. I mean, salute. And I mean, and it's no disrespect to him that you sit down with your biological. You know, I'm saying for you to sit down with your biological is no disrespect to the man that, you know, that raised you. So,
yeah,
man.
I realize that now.
Yeah. Well, if you still got time, man, make it happen. You know?
Yeah, definitely.
Make it happen. I don't know if you ever plan to have kids, but, you know, I generally, you know, tell people if you're going to ever have kids, there's something about having a sense of the reality of your family history that you can pass on to your kids. But when you don't know it, you know, it can be painful to watch your kids trying to figure stuff out. So yeah, man, I would urge you to do it, brother.
Well, I thank you, Doctor. I appreciate it. I love you. I love your show. You're doing a great work, and please don't. I know you go through a lot of information and a lot of stats and statistics and stories. You know, brothers are behind you, man. Seriously, there's not a day to go by that people are not referencing Dr. Hasan Johnson. They know you out there, and they know you working real hard.
Well, much appreciated, man.
Thank you, boss.
Oh man, I much appreciated, and I love you too, brother. Keep your head on a swivel. Keep your head up, man. Shout out to the father that raised you, and I hope the next time we run into each other, you can tell me, you know, you had a chance to find something out. But peace to you, man.
All right, thank you very much.
All right.
Peace.
Last one up for the night. We got guest one. Guest one, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay, it's a pleasure.
Yes, pleasure to meet you as well. What you got on this?
Yeah, I just want to read something really quick. There's short paragraphs, but it relates to everything. It's a story. It says, I'm going to edit some stuff here. A man in Jamaica blanked after realizing their 6 kids are not his. And basically, he did a DNA test, and that's when he realized none of the kids were his. And then the woman was said to have later confessed to her husband that she had been sleeping with other men, resulting in the children, and begged for his forgiveness. But days leading up to the blank. But here's the part. So he does a bad thing. But then he says a source said that what really angered the man was the fact that the woman had often gone to his workplace to embarrass him for child support, knowing that he was not the real father of the kids.
Wow.
So can this blank be seen as a justification because of the humiliation? 6 kids, she going to his work and humiliating him. I mean, I'm not saying blank is justified, but temporary insanity. I mean, these things go on.
You know, you might want to legally, you might want to speak to somebody that can articulate that legally, especially in regard to Jamaica. I couldn't say. I know emotionally.
That's the point.
Yeah, because emotionally, I understand.
Yes.
But when you start talking about loss of life, you know, at the end of the day, you're always it's really never going to be a full, unless it's in complete self-defense. There's not going to be a justification for it. But you know, Chris Rock said it once that you know, there are things you should never do. Like he said you should never kick an old man down a flight of stairs. You should never hit a woman. But he said, but I understand. You know what I mean? So in terms of what the story you just told, I understand.
But then this goes on, and a lot of women, they do this and they don't realize that there are consequences to their behaviors. They're only thinking in the present now. And this is the pattern I see, and it's cross-cultural. It doesn't matter what culture you're coming from, the Western side, but it's an issue. And when you speak about it, you are thought of, you're a misogynist.
Yeah.
And then on a side note, when you ask them what's a misandrist, they don't know.
No, they don't know.
Because they've been conditioned to know only one word.
Well, and Jamaica too. There was a study that came out of Jamaica as far as paternity was concerned, and the
70%.
number was extremely high.
Yeah, 70%. Yep.
70%. Yeah, I remember that. I don't know how accurate that is across the board, but just for that to come out, and I think if I remember correctly, that was coming from one facility that actually conducted the DNA, the testing.
Yeah,
And they were saying out of their client base, it was like 70%.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, but it's an issue that my question: how does one bring up facts that, woman, you can't be doing this and not thinking of consequences to your kids, because even the kids now are scarred for life.
Yeah.
And even if it weren't something as tragic as what the man did, when these kids get older, they realize, wow, this was a bait and switch. It's not, they're scarred.
Yeah.
And when you bring up subjects like this, oh no, you're misunderstood. That's just not right. Not right.
We're at a point now where men have to be very guarded about not just their sperm, but also their resources. And I mean that both materially and in terms of the emotional resources we extend. That said, it's at a point where, if you're in a relationship and you decide to have a child, even before the child, you should tell a woman, this is something I'm going to do. When, the woman that says she's pregnant with my child, we're getting tested. It's not up for negotiation. Now, if you don't want to be with a man like me, then make that decision now. But that's just going to be, and it's going to be a given. If we have multiple children, that's something I'm going to do, and it is what it is. You can like it, you can not like it, you can get upset, you can not get upset, but we actually have to be that guarded because there's no incentive for her to tell you. If anything, she's afraid you'll leave and all these other kinds of things.
Right.
It's important that, we be that protective. It just is what it is. Because you can, like you said, you could spend 18 years extending yourself in every capacity to raise these children just to find out they were never yours. You were lied to from the beginning, and the community would tell you, "Oh, well, suck it up because they're still your kids because you raised them." There's some truth to that, but when it's rooted in manipulation, it's best to not be in that situation at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I've heard cases where that even here, even in the U.S., where that once it's discovered that the father, the man is not the father, the judge would say you still have to pay child support.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's just ridiculous.
You can get with a woman that has kids. Y'all can be together for a short period of time, and you can be, depending on the situation, ascribed child support. Absolutely. There have been cases where men weren't even married, but had a birthday party for the child that they advertised, they posted on social media, and that was grounds for child support. It can be very nuanced, and and this is yet another reason why men are so hesitant about these kind of things, because the repercussions are severe.
Yes.
Raising a child for 18 years is severe. Just like the caller a couple callers ago, and he was talking about, the sacrifice of having to pay child support and navigate.
Yes.
That's time that he could have spent working on himself, building himself up, doing different things, meeting different people, going different places, but he's actually bound to one place while toiling away for 18 years trying to pay to secure these children, which is a noble thing. But if he were to turn around and find out that neither of his daughters were his, and he was lied to this entire time, and the courts didn't care, man, this is the part of the story you don't hear when you read an article about, somebody's ex-boyfriend or ex-husband, showed up and did something violent. You don't often hear about the other side of the story. And it's not that justifies the action, but most people would say, oh, there's at least more to this story than we were told. Because the way it's presented in the media, men just go off. Men just go off. They just, he just walked up and he did this to her. Well, no, wait, what's the context? And it's, it's not about excusing him. It's just about understanding.
Right. You're absolutely correct. Yeah.
That's the part of the story we don't get. But any closing thoughts as we transition out?
One, I like I've been following you for a while. I like what you do. I mean, you're brilliant. Love the swords behind you, by the way. And the memorabilia. But I think that this is a space where conversations like this needs to be had, because even if it's once it's recorded and it's posted, people can listen to it and hear different insights, things that are unspoken, that taboo, and what you talk about is literally cultural taboo, and it needs to be said. It's the noise that's out there that's suppressing well-reasoned thinking, and I think that this is something that needs to be done. I really appreciate the work that you do, and even the language that you're creating, the manosphere, gynocracy, your words, I like those. We need a new language. Something that can co-opt. So I do like that you are literally creating a new language around even this conversation as well. That's extremely important. Language I can't steal.
Absolutely.
Some try to do, but when you create it as a first, they can't take it. So I really appreciate what you do.
Hey, much appreciation to you. Thank you for coming up tonight.
Not a problem. Thank you, sir.
All right. Take it easy.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Well, I appreciate you guys coming up, participating in this. Thank you for getting the discussion going. Thank you for the comments in the chat. I've tried to keep up. I'm actually going to have to go back and read through them just because I saw so many of them were so rich and I wasn't able to really engage all of them to the extent I would have liked to. But I really do appreciate the patronage and the support as we get this conversation going and we find new ways to actually support Black men and boys and develop the means to do so. The lenses, the vocabulary, the social outlook to be able to make sense of what we're living. And I appreciate all of you being willing to participate in that. So until the next video, wish y'all well. Y'all have a good night. Peace. I am here to tell you, brothers, we are not criminals by birth, perennial rapists, incapable intellects, man-children, sperm donors, child support wellsprings, success objects, walking phalluses, ATM machines, lottery tickets, unintelligent henchmen, valueless assassins, pro bono mercenaries, unpaid bodyguards, interchangeable stepfathers, child discipline proxies, unpaid repairmen, workhorses, emotional tampons, or any other socially accepted dehumanizing stereotype. We are thinkers, inventors, innovators, leaders, fathers, and men. Embrace your humanity, know your worth, and extend your time, attention, and resources only to those who genuinely respect you. And remember, your worth is not defined by meeting other people's narcissistic and selfish and unrealistic needs. You define your worth. Peace. Yes.